Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Hopefully today's your last day of work, right? Hopefully your place of employment is going to give you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off to celebrate Thanksgiving, which is on Thursday. It is feast week. Just, football Thursday all day, football on Friday, college basketball all week. It's a good time of the year, right? We got NBA, college hoops, football, college, NFL. It's great. And it's something that I'm very thankful for. Okay, I'm very thankful for this time of the year. And because it's a time of giving thanks, I wanted to run through the beloved sports teams around Indianapolis and talk about things that they are and or should be thankful for. So, we got a little Thanksgiving-themed bit here. Also, loaded show today. 11 o'clock, Zach Hicks is going to join us. He always does. 11:40, Zack Gray is going to come back on. We're going to talk about that Ohio State-Indiana game, and we'll probably get into, some gambling stuff as well because he bets college basketball better than anyone that I know. So let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. What are the Indianapolis Colts thankful for? So I've got three things for every team around Indianapolis. Three things that they should be thankful for. So we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts. Let's start with Leatu Latu. The Indianapolis Colts and their fans should be thankful for Leatu Latu. Okay? Now, look, he was the first defensive player taken in the draft. Right? We all remember the video of Chris Ballard laughing maniacally when he says, we got the best pass rusher in the draft. We all remember it. And the dude's been good. He's been the best defensive lineman for the Colts this year. He has been. He's been really good all year, and I think the second half of the season, we're going to see him really kind of come to and be a little more dominant than what he was to start the season. Right? But even with the lackluster start, he is fifth on the Colts in tackles for loss. He is second in quarterback hits. He is third on the Colts in sacks. He leads the team in forced fumbles. He leads the team in pressures. He leads the team in quarterback knockdowns, and he leads the team in quarterback hurries. Okay, he only has 4 sacks on the year, yes, which is third best on this Indianapolis Colts team, but he's been productive. Okay, he's winning at the line of scrimmage, I think, more often than we realize because the sack numbers aren't as high. And you would think that as the year goes along and as he improves and as he learns kind of how to pass rush at the NFL level as opposed to the college level, that the sacks will come, right? He had a sack. I believe he's had a sack now in back-to-back games. And so I think he's slowly coming around to kind of being that great pass rusher that he was advertised to be before the season started. Colts and Colts fans are also thankful for Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And I know this because both, the Colts as a franchise and Colts fans bring those two guys up whenever they can. Whenever they have an excuse to talk about Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning, they do not miss the opportunity. Doesn't matter what else is going on. If they have an opportunity to bring those two guys up, they do. Even though Peyton Manning hasn't played for the Colts in over a decade, and it's been 5 years since Andrew Luck retired. So I don't know why they bring him up. Yeah, I do. It's because, Anthony Richardson. That's why they bring him up, because they know in their heart of hearts, and they are thankful for, the great success they had with Manning and Luck, because, we're now having to go through this rough, long process of having a young, developing quarterback, and it's just not as much fun as it is when Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck are on your football team. Okay? Colts fans should be and are thankful for Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck because generational quarterbacks just don't walk through the door every day. Just doesn't happen. The last thing here on my Colts list of things that they should be thankful for is the easy schedule that they received from the NFL. The only reason the Colts have a chance at the playoffs is because of their schedule. They should be incredibly thankful for it, right? They had the 5-game stretch earlier in the season against the Bears and the Steelers and the Jags. That was incredibly easy. They go 4-1 in that stretch. Okay, that's where most of their wins came from. And then the only reason why they have an outside chance at making the playoffs this year is because of the rest of the schedule. These final 5 games. The Patriots, that should be a win. The Broncos, that a tougher game, but still a very winnable game. Okay, the Titans, Jags, and Giants, please. Like, those should be 3 wins. Easy. Okay, it's the only reason the Colts have any sort of chance at the playoffs is because of this easy schedule. And the Colts should be thankful for the schedule that was given to them. Now, I want to quickly talk about the Patriots because this is my last show of the week. That game obviously coming up on Sunday. It's an absolute blessing that the Colts are playing the Patriots this week. This is a game the Colts should win, no questions asked. Okay, now look, it's the NFL, so they could lose because the other guys are getting paid too, and all those things. The Colts are 3-point favorites on the road in Foxborough. Here's the thing. The Patriots are terrible. They are one of, if not, the worst team in the NFL. Like, it's probably them, maybe Jacksonville. I would have thrown the Titans in there, but they just beat the Texans, so it kind of feels weird to do that. The Patriots are awful. Okay? The Colts should have their way easily in this game. Drake May, good quarterback. Not a great one. Okay, he's young. He's shown some flashes of potentially being great. But all in all, once again, the Patriots are awful. And the worst part of this bad Patriots team is their offensive line. The offensive line is terrible. And this Colts defensive line that has been good, but not as good as advertised before the year started, they should be dominant in this game. Okay, like the Colts defensive line, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart and Latu and Kwity Paye and all these guys, they should dominate the line of scrimmage in this game. Because once again, this Pacers offensive line is awful. And then defensively, the Patriots defense just continues to get worse and worse every single week. The offense should find some success. I don't expect for Anthony Richardson to only complete 39% of his passes, and I don't expect for Jonathan Taylor to only rush for 35 yards on 11 carries on Sunday. Okay, I expect for the Colts to win this game by at least a touchdown, right? Because they know that they basically have to win out in order to make the playoffs, right? And they know that Sunday is the start of the stretch that is going to allow them to hopefully do that. I think they get it off. I think they get it started the right way. I think they win and cover against the Patriots on Sunday. Moving on to the Indiana Pacers. What are the Indiana Pacers thankful for? Well, the biggest thing that the Pacers should be thankful for are injuries to their opponents. Okay, now I really liked that Pacers team from last year, but as we all know, the main reason why they made a run to the Eastern Conference Finals is because they didn't have to play against Giannis in the first round, and Damian Lillard got hurt during that first round playoff series, and then they played the Knicks, who were missing a bunch of players. They were essentially playing 7 guys, and that was it. And then when they finally played a team in the Boston Celtics, who were really good now and were great then, they were healthy, and the Pacers got swept. Sure, they had chances to win a couple games, but they got swept. Like, I'm not even going to try to defend it. So the Pacers are thankful for injuries to their opponents. The Pacers are also thankful for the Sacramento Kings' desperate pursuit of the play-in tournament. The reason why the Pacers are a good team, the reason or part of the reason why the Pacers made an Eastern Conference Finals run last year was because the Kings were willing to trade Tyrese Halliburton, who was awesome last night, by the way, in case you missed it. And the only reason that they got him is because the Kings, first of all, would kept De'Aaron Fox over him, which doesn't make any sense. And, like I said, they wanted to be relevant. They wanted to make the play-in tournament. And when you look at the Kings and the Pacers since that trade, Pacers have made the Eastern Conference Finals. They've won 2 playoff series. The Kings had 1 good regular season where they were the 3 seed and got bounced in the first round. The other year, they made the play-in, and that was it. They haven't made it out of the first round of the playoffs since that trade. So the Pacers and we are very thankful for the Sacramento Kings and their pursuit of the play-in tournament. And then the Pacers are also thankful for the Pelicans and the Wizards. Tyrese Halliburton has now had back-to-back good games this year, and the Pacers won both. Who would have thought? It's almost like when your best player plays well, you win games. I know that's a crazy concept, but who would have thought? Tyrese Halliburton had 21 points and 9 assists against the Wizards. That's a good game. Shot 5 of 11 from 3. Right? That's a really good outing from him. And then last night, he just decided to go nuts. He had 34 points and 13 assists. He shot 9 of 18 from 3. He might be back. He might be back. And if he is, shout out to the Wizards and the Pelicans for allowing him to go crazy and, kind of return to that all NBA form that we've seen him in these last 2 games. Moving on, continuing this whole, what are all these different teams thankful for? Let's look at Purdue. What is Purdue, the university, that whole, athletic department? What is Purdue thankful for? First and foremost, they are thankful that the football season is almost over. Purdue has 1 game left. They're playing Indiana. They should get crushed, but it's a rivalry game. This is why, Vegas doesn't decide these games. That's why we play them, even though Indiana is a heavy, heavy favorite. I mean, Purdue's awful, but could they play it close? I guess. It's their last game of the year, one way or the other. And then this pain and suffering for those Purdue players, coaching staff, and fans, it's over. So you got 1 Saturday left, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So congrats on that. Purdue fans should also be thankful for Zach Edey and his dominance these last 2 years in the world of college basketball. Look, it's rare to watch your favorite team have the best player in something. Like, the Colts had Peyton Manning, and he was great, and it's rare to find a franchise quarterback, but he wasn't even the best quarterback in the NFL because of Tom Brady. Like, the fact that Purdue had the best player in all of college basketball for 2 straight years, is insane, and it'll probably not happen again for a long time. So Purdue fans should be thankful for Zach Edey and all the winning and relevancy that he brought to the Purdue Boilermakers. They should also be thankful this year for Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. Those guys have a ton of experience, and Purdue's going to win a couple games this year that they probably shouldn't because they have 2 junior guards who have played in a lot of meaningful games. Okay, and that really matters. They're going to beat a couple teams that they shouldn't. For example, Alabama, because of those 2 players and just their ability to stay calm because they've been in every situation because they were both playing heavy minutes as freshmen and sophomores. And so Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, I think by the end of the year, Purdue fans are going to be very thankful for them and what they bring to the table. Moving on to Indiana, I split up Indiana football and basketball because as of right now, the Indiana athletic department has a ton of things to be thankful for as we're heading into Thanksgiving week, or we are in Thanksgiving week. So let's start with Indiana football. What is Indiana football thankful for? First and foremost, obviously they're thankful for Coach Cignetti, and they're thankful for that extension. Coach Cignetti could have left for any job in the country. Whatever job he wanted, it was his. He just had to ask for it. Okay? But he was like, nah, I like Bloomington, which Bloomington, really nice town. Only been there once, but nice place to be, right? So he decided to stay, signs a huge extension, right? $8 million a year, that's a lot, right? And the fact that, I'll be honest, I was kind of surprised when Kurt Cignetti said that he was going to stay, right? He turned down potentially the Florida job to stay at a program that's never won anything, and Indiana fans should be thankful for that. Indiana fans should also be thankful for their easy schedule. Okay, Kurt Cignetti's extension, a spot in the college football playoff. None of that's possible without this easy schedule, right? If they draw on Penn State and Oregon or just one or the other in addition to Ohio State, then they'd potentially be 10-2 on the outside looking in of the college football playoff. So I think Indiana football fans should be incredibly grateful for that schedule. And in part, they should also be thankful for conference expansion and the college football playoff expansion, right? Another reason, look, if this was a 14 playoff, Indiana would be eliminated, right? They'd have no chance at making the college football playoff. Now, though, it looks like they're going to. They're going to obviously release those rankings tonight. As we do every Tuesday, I'm going to give you the most correct college football playoff top 12 rankings as I do every Tuesday. And then, obviously we'll do top 10 Tuesday as well. But so, yeah, Indiana football should also be thankful for conference expansion and expansion of the college football playoff. What IU basketball is thankful for. Coach Bobby Knight, because without him, they'd be irrelevant. Okay, ever since he left, really my entire life since the year 2000, or I guess 2002, they made the Final Four. But ever since then, they haven't really done much. That's just kind of the reality of it. People, from Indiana and outside the state of Indiana, remember the legend of Coach Knight and everything that he built down in Bloomington. And, I think he's really all that Indiana fans have to hold on to in the world of basketball right now because they just haven't been good for the last 20 years, or they've underachieved for the last 20 years. That's probably a better way to put it. Indiana basketball fans should also be thankful for the transfer portal. If Indiana had just ran the same team back as last year, they would not be ranked 14th in the country, right? The team that they had last year was average at best, right? That's why they didn't make the tournament. Okay, it's why Purdue and potentially even Indiana State were better than they were last year. Okay, let's just be honest. Trey Galloway was one of the main attractions last year, right? He was one of the main guys that they ran their offense through. He's coming off the bench now. Okay, Indiana had a major lack of talent last year, but thanks to the transfer portal, the thing that Indiana basketball should be thankful for, they're now talented. They look like a legitimate Big Ten team. They have good guards, right? They've got a couple good bigs, right? And Mbako got better over the summer. That obviously matters. Hopefully Malik Renew did as well. We're going to find out this week because they play Louisville tomorrow, I believe, at noon. And, that'll be not a great test because Louisville doesn't look that great, but, it's better than playing SIEU or whoever. So, yeah, Indiana basketball should be thankful for the transfer portal because if it wasn't for that, it would be another long year of underachieving. And then Indiana basketball fans should also be thankful for wine and cigars. Mike Woodson is thankful for them, so you should be too. So, yeah, that is my Thanksgiving segment. I don't even know what else to call it. So, yeah, so that's what the Colts, Pacers, Purdue, IU football, and IU basketball are thankful for. Like I said, big show today. Zach Hicks at 11, as always. And Zack Gray is going to join me at 11:40. I'm on 3 hours today. No Dan Dockett show. So get your fill of sports radio right here for the next 2 hours and 40 minutes. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Top 10 Tuesday, the top 10 teams in the NFL after week 12 will be revealed. Keep it here. I'll be right back in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Happy Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday. Got a lot to get to today. Just so much stuff. Anyway, it's Tuesday, and as we do every Tuesday here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show, we got to do Top 10 Tuesday. We have to go over the 10 best teams in the NFL. Week 12 just concluded last night with the Ravens beating the crap out of the Chargers. The Harbaugh Bowl or the Har Bowl, whatever you want to call it. Not close, which isn't surprising when you look at that roster. When you look at the rosters, I like the Chargers. They're a good team. They're on my list, but, you know, they're just not as good as the Ravens. Anyway, top 10 teams in the NFL after Week 12. Let's start with number 10, the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, this is where I had them last week. They almost blew a game to the Bears. You know, up 10 late in the fourth. Caleb Williams figures out a way to bring the Bears back. And, you know, that wasn't a great look for the Vikings. They end up winning it in overtime. But Sam Darnold, it's been better these last 2 weeks, not turning the ball over, but I still don't trust him. Like, I'm sorry. Like, he's been in the league, 7 years now? It's like all of a sudden he's just supposed to be great. I don't trust it, especially when I've seen him struggle in different spots throughout this season, right? But to be fair to the Vikings and Sam Darnold, when he plays well, they can beat anybody. They can beat anybody. I just don't know when he's going to play well. They're pretty similar to the Georgia Bulldogs in that aspect of, like, for Georgia, whenever Carson Beck plays well, they can beat anyone. You just don't know when that's going to happen. The Vikings are the same way. When Sam Darnold is efficient and he doesn't turn the ball over, the Vikings beat teams. And when he's not, they kind of tend to lose. So I've got the Minnesota Vikings sitting there at 10. That defense is still good. I just don't think they're good enough at quarterback to put them higher on the list. So Minnesota Vikings at number 10. Number 9, I've got the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins have as many 3-and-outs since Tua's return as they do games where they did not punt. That number is 1. They've had 1 3-and-out since Tua returned from his concussion issues, and they've had 1 game where they didn't punt. Okay, they've now won 3 in a row, and they have a great chance to make the playoffs because of their schedule, right? If they win on Thursday, they're going on the road to play the Packers, and, you know, we're going to hear about cold weather during that entire game, especially if Tua struggles. 1-7 in games under 50 degrees, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. Even if they lose that game, they drop to 5-7, and their schedule the rest of the way is pretty easy, you know, even when you factor in that Packers game. So even if they lose this week and they fall to 5-7, they've got the Jets at home. That should be a game they win. They play at the Texans, who continue to get worse and worse every week, it seems. Then they play the 49ers at home. 49ers aren't very good this year. Who would have thought? And then they go to the Browns, and then they go to the Jets to close out the season. So Dolphins in a good spot to potentially make the playoffs. That's a team that the Colts have to watch out for. But they just have to have the same record as them, because the Colts obviously hold the head-to-head, and that is what matters. So there's that. I've got the Miami Dolphins at number 9, because these aren't standings. These are just the rankings of the best teams in the NFL as of today. Number 8, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they lost to the Browns. I had them 5th last week, dropped them. But look, it was a snow game. Snow games are kind of weird. Okay, George Pickens was, you know, a little more focused on fighting defensive backs than actually catching the football. So I don't know, like, they've got some issues there, but look, like, the reality of it for the Steelers is they have the best defense in the NFL. I don't think anyone would deny that, unless you wanted to, you know, I mean, there's other teams you could throw out there, but everyone, I think, would trust this Pittsburgh Steelers defense to get a stop, right? You know, I know Russell Wilson wasn't great against the Browns, but once again, like, snow game, weird, not normal. This team is still really good. They run the ball efficiently, and they're able to push the ball down the field now with Russell Wilson, because he still throws a pretty good deep ball. And they've got 2 big receivers in George Pickens and Mike Williams, who can go up and make plays on the ball. So they'll be fine. I know they lost a game to the Browns, but I'm still not overly worried about them. The Pittsburgh Steelers sitting at number 8. Number 7, a team that got blown out last night, the Los Angeles Chargers. That's a good team. Talented at quarterback. Justin Herbert is the man. As a Dolphins fan, I hate watching him play, because it's like, geez, imagine him with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and those guys. But anyway, Justin Herbert, still one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I know his numbers don't really represent that in the same way, but like just watch the dude play and you're going to be like, geez, that dude's awesome. So Chargers to 7 in part because of Justin Herbert. Jim Harbaugh has come in and given this team an identity. They run the ball. They have a good offensive line. And when they're able to run the football, they just don't really lose. That was kind of their issue last night against the Ravens. They just couldn't generate enough on the ground. Okay. And their biggest issue and why I don't have them higher and why they can't compete with teams like the Ravens and the Eagles and the Chiefs is because they just don't have the weapons at wide receiver, right? Like their best receiver is rookie lad McConkey, who I like, good player, liked him at Georgia, but if he's your best receiver, then like you need better receivers. And I can't even tell you who their tight end is. Okay. So they need better weapons, right? And as soon as they, add a couple receivers or a tight end, like their Super Bowl window will open rather quickly. Number 6, I've got the Green Bay Packers. Now, they just absolutely crushed the 49ers on Sunday, right? Beat them 38-10. Jordan Love wasn't great, like 13-23, but he didn't turn the ball over. That is the magic sauce for the Green Bay Packers. When he doesn't turn the ball over, the Packers win games, right? Because they run the ball well. Josh Jacobs is having a really good year. Everyone's paying attention to Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, rightfully so. But Josh Jacobs up there in Green Bay is having a really good year as well. This offensive line is good. This defense continues to play great. Xavier McKinney, 7 interceptions on the year, right? The Giants just let him go. Everyone's like, oh, I can't believe the Giants let Saquon Barkley go. He's having a great year. That statement should also apply to Xavier McKinney because he has 7 interceptions this year, and the Giants are just like, yeah, we don't need you. Go do whatever. And now he's out there in Green Bay absolutely balling out. So they force turnovers, and when Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over, they win a lot of games. And when Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over and he plays well, they can beat anybody. So I've got the Green Bay Packers sitting there at number 6. Number 5, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. The offense is dynamic. Derrick Henry's awesome. Lamar Jackson could win the MVP again. I don't know. We'll see. I don't think that there's any secret as to how great and explosive this Ravens offense is. They played against the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL last night and dropped 30 on them. Okay. So this Ravens offense can absolutely go. Defense, I have some questions. Okay. It's still one of the worst in the NFL at defending the pass. They've been better these last 2 weeks to their credit, but it's got to be a little more consistent. Like you can't have back-to-back weeks against a Chargers team that, let's be honest, doesn't have great weapons, as I highlighted not all that long ago. And you can't, and who is their other opponent? Their other opponent, I didn't think was great either. The Steelers, yeah, and then the Steelers, who were okay offensively, but a lot of their passing game is just throwing the ball deep. So need to see a little more substance from the Ravens. They're playing the Eagles, who I have ranked 4th this Sunday. I think we're going to learn a lot about where kind of both of these teams stand when they play on Sunday. The fact this game's at 1:00 is kind of insane to me, but hey, I don't mind it. It gives you something to look forward to after church. So Ravens at 5, the Eagles at 4. I don't trust Nick Sirianni at all, but they're a good football team, right? Like they just have so much talent that you can't not like them. Okay, they have the best or second best offensive line in the NFL. Saquon Barkley has been great this year, so great that they're throwing him in the MVP conversation. I think part of that is people are tired of quarterbacks winning the award, even though I don't understand that. It's the most valuable player, and your quarterback is always the most valuable person on your team. So, congrats to Saquon Barkley. You're in the discussion for MVP. You will not win it, though. Jalen Hurts, however, he's having the best year of his career. Okay? Arguably the best year of his career. Currently has a career high in completion percentage at 69%. He has a career high in passer rating. He's on pace to set a career high in rushing touchdowns. His touchdown to turnover ratio is 23-9. That's solid. Hopefully gets better. It's over 2-1. So yeah, I don't know. The defense is good. They struggled to start the year, but as that secondary has kind of gained some experience because they're really young on the back end, with the exception of Darius Slay. As they've kind of gained experience, they've gotten better. The linebackers, kind of same thing. The Dean kid from Georgia, geez, that dude's fast and tackles really well. And then this defensive line from the Eagles is really good as well. So Eagles, very complete. I think definitely the second best team in the NFC. Them and the Lions have kind of separated themselves from everybody else. Number 3, the Chiefs. Seeing them narrowly beat the Panthers is kind of concerning. But then you're like, I don't know, it's the Chiefs. Isn't this just kind of what they do? They scored 30 points, which is what they should have done against the Panthers. The issue is they gave up 27. Like, the Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, he's going to make adjustments. He's going to figure out ways to kind of help that defense out to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Bryce Young also had the best game of his career in that game. Like, I want him to do well so bad because he was so good at Alabama and he was kind of written off early and the situation around him isn't great. And I wonder if Spags was just like, you know what? We're going to see if Bryce Young can beat us. And he almost did. That's the cool thing about the NFL. Anybody can win on any given week. I trust Spagnuolo, probably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. I trust him to figure things out. There's a lot of talent on that side of the ball as well. So they'll be fine. This is just who they are. Okay, they play everybody close. Like you sit around and, I was watching breakfast ball this morning as I was getting ready for my show, and they did a segment and it was like time to panic about the Chiefs. It's like, no, this is just who they are. They play everybody close. When they get to, the playoffs, they'll turn it on and they'll beat good teams, which they've done this year. They're 10-1 for crying out loud. They're going to be fine. Number 2, I have the Buffalo Bills. Okay. The Buffalo Bills are, the best team in the AFC right now. They had a bye week, but nothing's really changed for them. They beat the Chiefs 2 weeks ago, or 2 games ago, I guess, by 2 possessions without Dalton Kincaid, their best tight end, and without Keon Coleman, their second best wide receiver. They hung 30 points up against a good defense. They held the Kansas City Chiefs offense to only 21 points. Okay? And that's without their best linebacker, Matt Milano, who's scheduled to return soon after tearing his biceps to start the year. As soon as he shows up, he'll be refreshed, energized, all those things, and he will make them better immediately. Okay, Amari Cooper was a great pickup. Very interested to see how he's kind of used after the bye week, just having a extra week to install different packages and things. They can run the ball. James Cook continues to be one of the better running backs in the NFL. And most importantly, they have a guy in Josh Allen who can put on the cape whenever he needs to. Simple as that. Number 1, the best team in the NFL, blew out another team on Sunday. They blew out the Indianapolis Colts because the Lions, they're the best team in the NFL right now. There's just no way around it. They beat the Colts 24-6. They beat the Jaguars 52-6, and they beat the Titans 52-14, and the Cowboys 47-9. They just blow out bad teams. That's all they do. They beat the crap out of bad teams. Right. And it's not even just that, right? Like, they've beaten good teams as well. Like, they beat the Cardinals, who were like, that's a good football team. They beat the Vikings. They're on, they're one of the 10 best teams in the NFL. They beat the Texans. And the interesting thing about the Texans game is Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions and they still won, which is insane. And they beat the Packers, who were one of the 10 best teams in the NFL. Like, this team is so good, and a lot is going to be made out about the offense and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff and all that stuff. And it should be, right? Because this is the best offense in the NFL. The thing that people don't, give enough love to, the thing that people don't give their flowers for, is this defense. This Detroit Lions defense hasn't given up a touchdown in 10 quarters. Zadarius Smith is playing now. And the crazy thing is they don't even have their best defensive player. Like, imagine if Aiden Hutchinson was playing. This team would be so much better. They are as complete of a football team as you'll find. So they have to be number 1 for Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL after week 12. Next, we've got, or coming back here in about 4 minutes, the college football playoff rankings come out tonight, right? We're going to learn quite a bit about kind of how they view these 3-loss SEC teams. And before they put out their rankings tonight, I just wanted to give you the most correct college football playoff rankings, or at least the most correct top 12. I'm going to give you that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. So at Consumer Cellular, we're lowering the price for those 50 and up. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and data for $30 a line when you buy two. That's just $60 a month for two unlimited lines. So if you're 50 and up, make the switch and save. Come on, you've earned this. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com today. Requires 2 lines of service, age validation, and credit approval, subject to system and area limits, taxes, and other fees apply.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest. The last one I needed for my set. Shiny.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're ready for the holidays. Zach Hicks joining me here at 11 o'clock. Zack Gray going to join me at 11:40 to talk a little more Indiana, Ohio State. Zach Hicks and I are going to talk, obviously, Colts, Lions, and we're going to look ahead to Colts and Patriots on Sunday. But before we get to that, I'm also probably going to talk about my college football playoff rankings with Zack Gray. Once again, that's at 11:40. The most correct college football playoff rankings, I'm going to tell them to you right now. Okay? And I got to be honest. I'm kind of at a point where I don't really care what the committee does with like 9, 10, or like 10, 11, and 12, as long as Indiana's in there somewhere. Because I don't think that the committee is going to rank them as high as I have them. But yeah. Anyway, because I'm sitting down last night and I'm trying to put these together, and I'm just kind of like, how do you pick 12? There's like 4 teams that you could pick from. And, then you get into personal bias and name brand and all that fun stuff. So I'm just kind of like, you know what? Good luck, committee, because this is incredibly difficult. And this is the issue with the expansion. Like, you're going to give an opportunity to someone to potentially play for a national championship that simply does not deserve it. And, we'll see how things go. But number 1, Oregon, pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. They have the second best win in the country. They beat Ohio State at home. They're complete. They're undefeated. They beat Boise State as well. That's a good win. So Oregon sitting at number 1 for me. Number 2, Ohio State. They have the best roster in the country. I think we all kind of realized how good they are after the way they crushed Indiana on Saturday. Looked like a normal college football playoff game. They should have done the same thing to Penn State, but Will Howard fumbled the ball through the back of the end zone and threw a horrendously bad pick 6. They're nasty. If Ryan Day doesn't win a title this year, I don't know when it's going to happen. I just don't. His team is absolutely loaded, and good luck having a better roster than this Ryan Day. Like, this is the year for Ohio State to win the whole thing. But first they have to beat Michigan, because if he doesn't beat Michigan, then, they might fire him, which is the dumbest thing ever, but that's beside the point. Number 3, Texas. I know their best wins are Vanderbilt, Michigan, and Arkansas, but like, have you watched them play? They're extremely talented. They have one of the best coaches in college football in Steve Sarkisian. The majority of this team went to the college football playoff last year, and I know that shouldn't matter, but come on now, like we're really going to rank Texas below Penn State or SMU? Like, come on now. Texas is legit, and they're going to have an opportunity on Saturday when they play Texas A&M to prove it. That environment is going to be awesome. I would love to be at that game, but, I don't have $1,000 to throw away at a ticket, so I'm not going to go. But they have an opportunity Saturday to prove that they belong to prove that they're the third best team in the country. I believe they're playing Texas. I know they're playing Texas A&M. I think it's on the road. Not 100% sure on that. And then if they win that game, they'll advance to the SEC championship game where they're going to play another good SEC team and have another opportunity to kind of prove how good they are at football. Number 4, another SEC team, Georgia. Georgia at their best can beat every team ranked in front of them. Like, if you came to me and you're like, Jonathan, Georgia's going to play the way that they did against Texas earlier in the year when they went on the road and they beat Texas, the best win of any team in the country. Jonathan, they're going to play like that. I would pick that Georgia over anybody. Over anybody. Okay? The question is just whether or not they're going to play like that. The 2 times that they haven't, they've lost to good teams. Okay? When Carson Beck doesn't play well, they're like the Packers. When Carson Beck plays well, they're really tough to beat. Okay? When he doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to beat almost everybody. But when he plays average or good, they can beat anybody. Like, that's just kind of who Georgia is. They've got multiple really good wins. And so I think that they deserve to be 4th. And their 2 losses are to good teams. So, it's hard for me to kind of complain about it. Number 5, I've got Tennessee. They're incredibly good as well. I think people have kind of cooled off on them because through the first 4 weeks of the season, everybody loved Tennessee, and then they lose to Arkansas, and then it's like, oh, they're actually not that good. And then, they've just done nothing but win, and, obviously they lost to Georgia, but they have that win over Alabama. Like, this team's good, talented. I think Josh Heupel's a good coach. They're explosive on offense, and they've got more NFL players on defense than they do offense. So they're good. Outside of the Arkansas game, they've crushed bad teams, and they've beaten a couple good ones in there as well. So I've got them ranked 5th. I have Indiana 6th. This is still a good team. They've still crushed every bad team that they've played, with obviously the exception of Ohio State. They still have an efficient offense. Their front seven's awesome. I think we saw that against Ohio State. They just don't have the talent on the perimeter to deal with the teams ranked in front of them. That's kind of where their issues show up. So yeah, I've got them at 6. And some of you are like, Jonathan, they just got crushed by Ohio State. Like, how can you have them at 6? Because, I went over this yesterday. The average margin of victory in the history of the college football playoff is 30 points. 18 points. Like an average college football playoff game is a 3-possession game. That is how much the winner usually wins by. And that's what we saw on Saturday. Like, if that's happening to, the first, second, third, and 4th best teams in the country, then I don't see why Indiana would be any different putting them at 6. Number 7, I have Notre Dame. That loss to Northern Illinois has to matter. It has to. Okay, they've looked much better since then, to be fair to them. They beat A&M on the road. That is still impressive, but that A&M loss, or win, looks less and less good every single week. And outside of that A&M game, they haven't played anyone great. Like, Army and Navy, sure, they're ranked, but come on now. Like, they're in the American Conference. They've made light work of the bad teams on their schedule. That's what Notre Dame's done. So we're going to put them here at 7. Number 8, I have Penn State, which I don't like because they just continue to barely beat everybody. And it's kind of annoying. Like, they beat Minnesota by 1 on Saturday. They beat USC by 3. They beat Bowling Green by 7. Like, they don't wow me. Like, the offense, I don't think, is very good. Thank you, Gritty in the YouTube. By the way, Indy Sports Ticket over on YouTube. Go Go check it out. Watch their comment. Be part of the conversation. Tell me if you think I have Indiana too high or too low. Thank you, Gritty. Gritty likes that I have Indiana at 6. So thank you. That makes me feel better. Anyway, back to Penn State at 8. They're barely beating bad teams. They beat Minnesota by 1, beat USC by 3, beat Bowling Green by a touchdown. Like they don't wow me. Like I watched them play against Ohio State, and that offense is terrible. Like you think that the Indiana offense was bad. Like the Penn State offense was worse. They didn't score an offensive touchdown against Ohio State. So I just think that they lack the firepower to kind of beat the better teams because they barely have the firepower to beat the not very good teams. So Penn State there at 8. And then 9, 10, 11, and 12, I'm just kind of like, I don't even know what to do. You're just guessing at this point, which is why 12 teams is way too many in the expansion of the college football playoff. Sure, it makes more money. Sure, more teams are included. I just don't like to give out participation trophies, and that kind of feels like what I'm doing right now. But that's, beside the point because this is what we have now. Number 9, I have SMU. Their one loss is to BYU by 3. Outside of that, they've crushed everyone since making that switch to Kevin Jennings as the starting quarterback. They are highly explosive on offense. They've got a couple good wins. They just haven't beaten anyone great. Like they beat Pitt, who was undefeated when they played them. They beat Louisville, who was previously ranked. They just don't have any great wins, so it's hard for me to rank them higher. But they're going to play in the ACC championship game. They've got that spot locked up. They're going to play Miami or Clemson, and that'll be their chance to grab a signature win. Like that is their opportunity right there. So, if they win the ACC championship game, like they'll get a first round bye and all that fun stuff. So hopefully they do. I like watching them play. Rhett Lashley, really good coach. They extended him. Kind of like the other Kurt Signetti goes to a school. Well, I guess SMU has a ton of history, but you know what I mean? A school that's been struggling, and then he's just kind of helped revive that program, and they're going to be really good for a long time because a lot of rich people graduate from that school. Anyway, number 10, I've got Miami. I think they're really similar to SMU. They don't have any signature wins, but they're really explosive on offense. I mean, really explosive on offense. They have a couple decent wins, like they beat Louisville, but they don't have any great wins, and they haven't blown teams out the way that SMU has, and their loss to Georgia Tech is worse than SMU's loss to BYU. It just is. And so that's why I have them lower. Also, I trust that SMU defense way more than I trust that Miami defense. So I guess there's another reason right there why I've got Miami one spot lower than SMU. Number 11, here's where things get really interesting, right? Because I think those first 10 teams, I think everyone's going to have them in their top 10. The order may differ a little bit, but I think like that has to be the top 10. All right, like I said, you can switch the order around, that's fine, but yeah, that top 10 should be solidified. And then when you get to 11 and 12, and when it comes to the committee tonight, this is where I'm most intrigued to see what they do. Okay, like who are they going to put at 11? Who are they going to put at 12? I have South Carolina at 11, which is, it's like of all the 3-loss SEC teams, why are you picking South Carolina? First off, I love watching them play. Secondly, the difference between them and Ole Miss and Alabama and and Texas A&M, the other 3-loss SEC teams, is their losses aren't as bad. Like they're all close. They're all close losses to good teams, right? Like Alabama lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Those aren't good losses. Ole Miss lost to Florida and Kentucky. Like those aren't good losses. Texas A&M lost to Notre Dame and Auburn and got crushed by South Carolina, right? South Carolina's losses aren't that bad. They're all close. They're nasty on the defensive line. Like South Carolina, that defensive front, it's one of the best in the country. I mean, they're just tough up front. The quarterback and the offense in general, really explosive. Okay, they've got a really fast, athletic quarterback who can run and throw. They got a running back that's really good, Rocket Sanders, which with a name like Rocket, like you've got to be awesome at football. Anyway, so the offense is good. As I mentioned, that defensive front's nasty. They're a good team. They, like I said, their best win is that dominant win over Texas A&M. If they beat Clemson on Saturday, like that's another good, impressive win that might push them over the top, depending on other teams winning and losing their last games of the season. We'll kind of see what the committee does with South Carolina, but very interested to see what they do with them tonight. And then number 12, I didn't know. I was like, Boise State. I was like, no. I refuse to rank Boise State because, look, people say that Indiana's schedule is soft, but Boise State's schedule makes Indiana's schedule look like the hardest one in the country. Like, seriously. So I was like, I'm not ranking Boise State. I cannot do it. Number 12, I put Clemson. They got crushed by Georgia at the start of the year. And as soon as that happened, everyone wrote them off as if Georgia wasn't supposed to be the best team in the country this year. And then they go on this long win streak. They're crushing bad teams because the ACC isn't very good outside of Clemson, Miami, and SMU. They're crushing everybody. And then they play Louisville and they lose. And those are their two losses, Georgia and Louisville. And to me, those losses aren't as bad as the losses that Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M have, which is dumb. Like, I hate ranking teams because their losses aren't as bad. Like, I really do. I don't like it. But at the same time, like, the worst version of Alabama is awful. The worst version of Ole Miss isn't very good. The worst version of Texas A&M isn't very good either. And so, I already did the whole Boise State hasn't played anybody thing. So I'm at this point where it's just like, there's just too many teams in this. There's too many teams, right? Like when you can make an argument for 4 different teams to be 12th and 11th, that's just too many teams. Like the 14 playoff, like it was easier and it was just more clear cut. Okay. Like right now, I don't think people would be having really all that much discussion about Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia. Like if those were the top 4 teams and it was only a 14 playoff, I think people would be understanding. There might be some SMU fans that are upset, but they'll be fine, whatever. And that would really be it. Whereas now, like we're just gonna have so many teams that are gonna be really upset that they didn't get in, and that is not always the best thing. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, my guy Zach Hicks, he's gonna join. We're gonna talk Colts and what's that team's name? Lions, and then we're going to look ahead a little bit to Colts and Patriots as well. Should be a great show, or should be a great segment. Make sure you stick around for it. It's always a blast when Zach Hicks comes on, and he'll be on here in about 4.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real... Jeez. What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're all set up and ready to go to eat some awesome food this coming week. Joining me now, because it's Tuesday and because it's 11 o'clock, Zack Hicks of Locked On Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at Zack Hicks 2. Zack, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Grew up my whole life working retail, so this week is a little bit hectic. I don't want to say my whole life. I guess the last 8 years working a little bit of retail during this week. So a little bit of a hectic week, but fun times.
I don't know. I worked in the restaurant business. I waited tables for 3.5 years, and I think I'd rather work in retail.
Yeah, I will say this as a retail person. Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'd rather work retail as well than doing anything in the food business. I'm definitely in favor of retail over that.
Yeah, food business. Anyway, let's talk. We're not in the food business right now. We are in the business of the Indianapolis Colts, which is not a great business to be in right now because they got crushed on Sunday, which isn't the most surprising thing. People are upset about Richardson, which is just, that's the way it works. Like if he'd won and been 11 of 28, I don't think anyone would have cared. I didn't think he was terrible. Like I thought it was kind of like the Houston game where receivers probably could have helped him out a bit. He didn't have a ton of time to throw. What'd you think of how Richardson played on Sunday?
Yeah, it's always hard to approach this conversation because you always feel like you're looking through it with rose-colored fan goggles when you say hey, this guy looked better than his stat line. So I will preface this by saying this. Even if we can point out moments in those early games this season, like the Chicago start for him, the Green Bay start, even the second Houston game or the Miami game, for instance, right? Those four poor starts from Anthony Richardson. Even if we point out a couple of throws that his players could have made plays for him, I don't think he played particularly well in those games. At best, you can maybe say he was adequate with a lot of hits and a lot of misses. And then when his guys missed on some opportunities, it made it look worse. I would argue that this past Sunday was a different level of game from him than any of those four starts were. I was on your show each of those weeks, man. I was very clear on how I approached each of those games, being look, they need better from their quarterback. When I talk about this past game, I really don't see too many negatives from Anthony Richardson. I mean, he was pushing it a little bit in the fourth quarter because at that point they had lost, nearly 200 yards of offense due to penalties and drops and miscues from guys around him. So he was really just going for, the home run ball or nothing in that fourth quarter. They had 6 points and they were down by 2 scores or 3 scores in the fourth quarter. So he was really pushing it. And that's where the incompletions really started to mount for him. But honestly, up until that point, I thought he was playing a really good game. The first half was some of his best football of the season. I would argue right up there with that Jets game for him. He played really, really well in the first half. And then even to start the second half, he had a couple. He had the deep throw to Josh Downs that was taken off the board. A couple other nice throws that didn't count because of penalties. I thought he was playing some good ball. If you look at the advanced stats behind this game, he was 11 of 28. But 5 of his incomplete passes were either plays where he was hit as he threw it, knocked down at the line of scrimmage, or throwaways, right? So that's 5 of the incomplete passes where he wasn't even really targeting anybody because of circumstances around him. He was pressured at a near 50% rate on his dropbacks in this game, despite having the 8th fastest time to throw in the NFL this week. So he was getting the ball out pretty quick, and he was still pressured on nearly 50% of his passes. Took 0 sacks. It's crazy enough with that amount of pressure. And then you even look at the penalties around him. He lost 79 yards passing on 4 completions due to penalties. One was that 30-plus yard throw to Josh Downs at the sideline. He lost a touchdown that Drew Ogletree just inexplicably dropped, an easy walk-in touchdown. He lost a 40-yard pass to Ashton Doolin where Doolin couldn't get his feet in for whatever reason. Kylan Granson didn't turn around on a hot read throw over the middle, and Pro Football Focus rightfully graded that as a drop for Kylan Granson. I don't think it technically hit his hands, but I would call that a drop because I don't know why he wasn't looking back at his quarterback on the hot read on that 4 verts call. So I think if you add it all up, he had like 200 yards passing on top of his 170 he finished with that were just taken away because of whatever was going on with his supporting cast in this game. It was a truly dreadful game from anyone not named Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce on offense for the Colts in this game. So, I thought it was a positive showing from Anthony Richardson. I thought it was a good week from him that built on his Jets start. And I'm not the biggest like Pro Football Focus fanboy. Like, I don't throw their grades out or their advanced stats as like the gospel, but I do think that they overall are very good with their grades when it comes to quarterbacks. I think that's always been one of their strongest graded positions. And we even saw early in the season, Pro Football Focus would put Richardson's games at like below average to even awful in some of them. And I thought that was pretty justified in a lot of these ways. This past game was his second highest graded game of his career, according to Pro Football Focus. His second highest graded passing performance, and he was, I think, their 5th graded quarterback across the NFL this past week. So even a site like Pro Football Focus, who has been harsh on Richardson for his past starts, even they acknowledge in this past game in particular, it was very different from the other ones. Like, we could say the supporting cast let him down in some of the other games, but I think if you watch this past game, it truly was an abomination of a supporting cast. I have not seen a supporting cast or a team just get overwhelmed like that in so long. Like, it was just inexplicable how many mistakes the players around Richardson made. So overall, I don't think he was perfect in this game, but I do think this was a very positive showing following up that Jets game. And it was a positive showing against the number 2 pass defense in football. So hopefully he can carry that momentum into games against the Patriots and the Giants and the Titans and the Jaguars, which are a little bit easier defenses than what he's faced even at all this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked on Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks. 2, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I thought he played well, which just doesn't feel right to say because he was 11 of 28. But, like you did, I watched the game. I watched all those plays get called back. I watched Ashton Doolin not get his foot in. I watched Ogletree drop a pass. I watched him get pressured on half of his dropbacks, just like you said. And I saw him do all this without a run game outside of himself because Jonathan Taylor didn't have a great day, which brings me to Shane Steichen. Like, I get it. The run game wasn't great with Jonathan Taylor, but he's probably the best player on this offense. I thought Steichen I didn't think Steichen was bad, but I did have an issue with him only giving Jonathan Taylor the football 11 times. How do you think Steichen did yesterday?
Yeah, I thought overall it was a fine game coaching, like offensive play calling from him. I think a lot of their passing concepts were pretty good, and to get receivers open against a really tough Detroit Lions defense, I thought they did some pretty good things there. I like how they targeted the backup corner quite a bit, especially vertically down the field. The Doolin near catch was targeting that corner. Alec Pierce's long catch was targeting that corner. So they did some good things, mixed in some mesh concepts, and had some hot reads against the blitz, which they hadn't shown early in the season. So overall, I thought it was a good game plan from him as an offensive coordinator. I do think, again, the run game needs something, but at the end of the day, when you're it's one thing if it were just Dalton Tucker getting blown up on every play, which it was on a lot of plays. Don't get me wrong. Dalton Tucker had a very poor performance yet again. And I think the end is near for him as a starter with Indy, but it wasn't just him. It was also Tanner Bortolini had a rough game at center. Quentin Nelson might've had his worst start I've ever seen him have in his entire career. I don't know what happened to him in this game. Like, I truly, because like up until this point, I would argue that he was having one of his best career seasons, like an all-pro caliber season, doing some really great things on the O-line and really holding down the fort while other guys were struggling. And then this performance happened, and he was probably the biggest liability on the Colts offense in this past game. I truly have no clue what happened to him this game. Hopefully he got all of it out of it, like every bit of bad play out of his system in this one game, but he was very overwhelmed. The tackles were overwhelmed, and then they were bringing like Brian Branch up in the slot. So it was just going to be hard to run the ball. I think they could have maybe run it a little bit more with Richardson in like that third quarter to get some things going. But again, you don't want to run him like 15, 20 times. They already ran him 10 times in this game. So it's a little bit of a tough balance. And then they just had no push up the middle for Taylor. And if you were going to run him to the outside, then you were relying on this tight end group to block Brian Branch. And
that just doesn't sound great. That sounds terrible.
Yeah,
that sounds like a terrible idea.
The tight end group had what, 3 penalties in this game blocking, and they had multiple drops. They had 2 drops in this game, a drop touch. I mean, the tight end group was horrendous in this game for the Colts. So it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to the run game. I understand the complaints that people have, but it's like, it's been a complete mess these last couple of weeks, and I just don't know what you're going to do with it. And it's not like Taylor's been playing well despite it either. Like, I know Taylor gets a bit of a pass because the O-line's been this bad, but he can't really create anything right now. Like, his big way of creating is with his vision now. And because the lanes aren't there, he's not able to create with his vision, but he doesn't really force missed tackles at all anymore. He doesn't really have the explosion to beat guys to spots or the power to run through guys anymore. Like, it's really just the vision. So unless it's well blocked, like, he's not really getting you anything. So it's kind of a conglomeration of the O-line struggling, the tight end struggling, and then I don't think Taylor's playing his best football either right now. And the result is the run game is just a complete mess. So yeah, I get the complaints, maybe go back to him a couple times in the second half and try to get it going, but it was so dead in the water that I don't really blame Steichen for just being like, I mean, we got to throw, I guess, to get back in this.
And that's the other thing, right? Like, when you're down 2 scores late, like, you have to throw the ball. Like, that's just, how football works. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks too. So during the game, I'm on Twitter, and it's just Colts fans being like, we need a new tight end. We need a new tight end, which is fair. We'll not disagree with that. My thing is, I just think that there are other things that this roster needs before a new tight end. I don't think that, like, this roster as a whole, I just don't think is as good as people thought it was going to be coming into the year. Do you kind of agree with the idea that the Colts have other position needs that are a little bit more than tight end? And are you a little, I guess, disappointed by what the supporting cast around Anthony Richardson has been this year?
I think disappointed and also not disappointed in the same sense. Like, I think the top 3 wide receivers have been pretty good for the Colts this year. I know it's been a little spotty at times, like with Pittman's back and his injury. Like, he is really fighting through some stuff out there, and for him to even have a game close to what he had on Sunday with the injuries he's fighting through is just a big testament to who he is as a wide receiver. Downs has had his injury issues this year, but he's been fantastic on the field, and Alec Pierce has been the best version of him that we've seen in the NFL. So I think those 3 have been really good. Taylor's had some good moments this season, and the O-line, when they were healthy early in the season, were playing some great football in front of Richardson. When they had Fries and Ryman out there, I mean, it was fantastic offensive line play that the Colts didn't really take advantage of. So I think in a sense, the supporting cast has been good around him, but also in another sense, like you mentioned, like as of late, the offensive line play has been downright horrendous. Like, there's really no way around it. Braden Smith has gotten worse as the season's gone along. The right guard play has fallen off a cliff since Fries has been injured. Bordellini's been up and down at center. Like, I'm not really too down on him at center. And Gonsalves has been okay filling in at left tackle, but it's not really at the Bernhardt-Ryman type level that the Colts really need at that position right now. So the O-line play has dropped off. The tight end play, which is the whole crux of this issue here, is obviously horrendous. The other wide receivers besides the top 3 have kind of struggled at times. Any other running back besides Jonathan Taylor doesn't really give you anything either. And that's just talking about the offense. The defense certainly has some needs as well in terms of a playmaking outside corner alongside Jalen Jones, something at linebacker that can cover, safeties that can make some plays on the ball in the air. Like, I do think that they have quite a few needs on this team, but I do kind of agree that tight end is a big need, just because I feel like you just need something. Like, I don't think it needs to be like a first round pick or maybe even a second round pick, but like maybe a top 100 pick, like a guy who's just been there, done that. Like, they always take these projects at tight end or these like role specific guys, which is fine. Like, if you want to fill your room out with a bunch of role specific tight ends and stuff, like, that's fine. But give me at least one dude in here that can be like the top guy who dominates the snaps, like a Jack Doyle type even. Like, Doyle wasn't perfect by any means, but he could be a pass catcher. He could be a run blocker. He could dominate your snaps and be out there for 70% of the game, 75% of the game. Just give me a guy like that who you feel comfortable being on the field at all times, and a guy who can get open when he needs to, and a guy who can block his butt off. Like, it's not like you need some superstar there, but like, give me someone capable. As of right now, the closest thing they have to that is Mo Ali Cox, and like, I might beat Mo in a foot race. Like, I love Mo to death, man. He's a fantastic like third tight end for a normal team, but because he's the only guy who can consistently do multiple roles, he has to be the number one guy here because the other guys are so inconsistent and so pigeonholed. So they really need something there at tight end. Like, it could be as early as round 1 or 2. Like, I like that Tyler Warren kid out of Penn State. I think he's a fantastic player.
I think everyone likes him, though. That's kind of an issue.
Yeah. He looks like Dallas Clark, the number 44, and he's really fast. Well, I don't think he's nearly as fast as Clark, but, good athlete too. But yeah, like, it doesn't have to be him, but it'd be nice if it was him. Or it can just be like one of these other guys in like the middle rounds. Like, just give me someone who can actually play a good amount of the game and get open a little bit, like, give me something more of like the full package at tight end rather than these role specific guys who aren't even that great in their role. So I do kind of agree that tight end's a pretty big need. It might not be the biggest, but certainly a need going into the offseason.
Yeah, I'm with you, joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked on Colts. I think that, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I'd rather than see them use a first round pick on a corner, or maybe, if there's a good offensive lineman that falls, something like that. But if they wanted to take one in like the third round, I'd have no issue with it whatsoever. Like I said, I just feel like there are other needs that are a little more important right now. But like you said, if they took them, with a top 100 pick, it'd be hard to be upset, especially if it was Warren, because that dude, like you said, is an absolute monster. So because Thanksgiving's on Thursday, I opened my show by kind of taking all the sports teams around Indianapolis and listing things that they should be thankful for. And for the Colts, one of the things that I did was Leatu Latu, because he's been good this year, and I think he has a sack in back-to-back games now. He leads the Colts in forced fumbles. He leads the Colts in pressures and hurries and all those things. Do you think that we're kind of poised for him to be really good in the second half of the season?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at the opponents coming up for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, I know the Denver Broncos have one of the best offensive lines in football, and that's kind of the outlier game in these last 5. But if you're looking at the offensive lines the Colts play these next couple of weeks, the New England Patriots offensive line, one of the worst in football. The New York Giants offensive lines, one of the worst in football. The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans, I mean, just 2 horrendous offensive lines right now. So I think things are shaping up for Leatu Latu to finish this year really strong, and maybe he can, finish this season with those like 7 or 8 sacks that people projected in the preseason, and just leave off this year on a really high note going into next year. But yeah, I think that's a great call out. I think he's been playing some really good football of late. I think he's a guy who, if you ever are dumb enough to match up a tight end or a 6 offensive lineman on him in pass protection, he's going to really make your offense pay.
Yeah.
We saw it for his forced fumble against the Bears back in week 3. We saw this past week, he forced the fumble against Dan Skipper in pass protection as a 6th offensive lineman for the Detroit Lions. So he's got that down, and I do think he's getting better at beating like true starting offensive tackles. So I think if he can just build momentum against, again, these next couple of weeks, a couple of below average offensive tackles to be as nice as possible against some of these guys. I mean, Nicholas Petit-Fier, whatever his name is for the Tennessee Titans, is certainly far below average. But I think if he can build up some consistency against those guys and build up some momentum, go into the offseason, attack what he needs to do against like real starting offensive tackles, and then go from there, I think he can be that like third difference maker on the defense, which the Colts really need. I mean, you got Kenny Moore, you got DeForest Buckner. Those are your difference makers when it comes to like forcing turnovers, like closing out games. Those are your 2 guys. If you can add a third guy to that, whether it's Leatu Latu or, if they can get a playmaking corner, like outside corner in the future, that's such a huge thing for this defense. And I think Latu is their next best guy at being that third like difference maker that can close out games. So I think he's right on the precipice of it. And I think if it doesn't happen late this season, certainly going into next season, I think he's got all the ingredients to be that guy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's important for people to remember that, like, it takes time for rookie pass rushers to kind of develop, because pass rushing in college is just really different than doing it in the NFL. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. 2 more questions for you, Zach, and I will let you go. I don't even know how to word this question. So I'm just going to ask it. Do you think that there's been too much drama around the Colts this year? Like, all the Richardson stuff has been drama filled. The Pat McAfee thing happens with Zaire Franklin. Like, how big of a deal do you think that is for the Colts?
I do think it's weird for a team with their recent success or lack of, I guess, for a better term. Like, just, it's not even like they've been a horrible team these last, like, I don't even want to just say this past year, like these past 6-7 years, you know, under Chris Ballard. Like, they've been a perfectly adequate team with a little bit of high and a little bit of low. Perfectly adequate team under Chris Ballard. But for a team with so much just adequacy and in a small market, it is insane how much drama we have around this team every single year. Like, it's not even just the Pat McAfee stuff this season or the Anthony Richardson benching stuff. It's the Jonathan Taylor holdout last year. It's the Andrew Luck retiring before the season starts. It's, I mean, a weird one that people only talk, like, their starting strong safety, Kari Willis, retiring like going into his 4th year, like in the NFL with like no injuries. He just like stepped away. You know, it's like stuff like that. You know, it's like we can never have a normal season or off season with this team. It always has to be something. And it's so weird for a team with like just an adequate team in a small market, you know, like it's such a weird thing. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of just par for the course, I guess. There's always something going on with this team, like whispers and rumors. And last year, 2 players got suspended late last season for conduct detrimental to the team, and we didn't even hear about. We just still have no clue.
We still don't know. Yeah,
you know. Yeah. So it's like it's always something with this team, but yeah, I mean, obviously you want to have as little drama as possible, but at the end of the day, when you're not an undefeated team or a top team, there's always going to be some kind of drama because, you know, a lot of personalities mashing in the locker room. But the Pat McAfee stuff is fun. That's funny.
It really is. I mean, I don't know, man. I just, like, I played, you know, like small college baseball, like nothing like the Colts. But I just feel like when you lose a lot, you just shouldn't say anything. Like, that's just kind of the way, you know, I was told. That's the way I was raised, at least. And, you know, if you do talk and you lose a lot, then people are going to call you out. Like, that's just the reality of it. And you're right. Like, you didn't even mention, you know, Grover Stewart getting suspended last year for the PED stuff, and guys, the gambling stuff that happened in the locker room. And like, just like you said, there's always something. And, you know, if they would just win games, I don't think any of this would be an issue. But, you know, that's hard to do in the NFL. Last question for you.
It becomes a big issue when you're losing.
Yes.
Right? Like it's like I mean, again, this doesn't apply to everybody, but like when it comes to like off-field issues for a player, like if the guy comes in, he stinks and he has off-field issues, or your team's losing and you have a guy with off-field issues, regardless of what the off-field issues are, it becomes more prevalent. But the guy comes in, he's fantastic and he's winning for you. Unfortunately, the way that this stuff works is nobody cares, you know, and it's the same with the team. Like, if you have all this drama, but like the Detroit Lions, for instance, Jameson Williams keeps getting suspended every other week, it feels like. I mean, I've had him in fantasy the last 2 years. I know that he gets suspended all the time, but like no one's talking about the drama around the Lions because they obliterate people on Sundays. Or Jameson Williams still comes in and puts up 100 yards every other Sunday because, you know, they're a good team. So yeah, winning cures all in the NFL. It cures everything, and it makes the drama seem like whispers. Yep. So they just got to win. They got to win these last 5, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Great answer. That's a perfect segue. Speaking of winning the last 5, look, if they win out, they're probably in the playoffs. I think 10 wins does it. They'll have the tiebreaker over the Broncos if they win out, and they already have the tiebreaker over the Dolphins. What are the chances that they do that? I think there's a good chance they go 4-1 because the Patriots, Titans, Jags, and Giants are all bad. So I guess really kind of what are the chances that they beat the Broncos here in 3 weeks?
I would say if I were really looking at the schedule, I mean, I would say a pretty good chance at like 3-2, pretty solid chance at 4-1, and then probably 50-50 at 5-0, which seems crazy for a team that has 5 wins total on the season, for us saying like 50-50 they win out at this point. But it is the nature of their schedule. I mean, they play, I think, 4 teams with that are top 7 in draft order right now to finish the season. It really does come down to that Denver Broncos game, and the Denver Broncos are a tough matchup for this Colts team. Fantastic zone defense on that side of the ball for them. Bo Nix plays a very get the ball out quick game on offense, which we know can hurt the Colts because their biggest deficiency right now is backing off in zone and then struggling to come up and make tackles. That's kind of where the issues have been with this Colts defense. They really have been making quarterbacks that hold on to the ball pay. Bo Nix does not hold on to the ball. The ball is out quick, and that's they put very little on their young quarterback, and that's why he's kind of built up his confidence recently. So I do think that Denver game will be a tough matchup for the Colts. I'm not saying that they're 100% destined to lose, because I don't think the Broncos are the Broncos are certainly a step below some of the good teams the Colts have played this season. They're probably on like a similar tier of like the Houston Texans, which the Colts have lost to twice. So I'm not saying again that this is a win for the Colts, but I do think it's closer to like a Texans type game than it is a Bills or a Lions type game. But yeah, that'll essentially be a playoff game for this Colts team. I mean, as long as they take care of business in the other games. And I will say this about this Colts team, we bemoan them, we cry about them, and we punch air about them every Sunday. But this season they've played a particularly really hard schedule in terms of around the league. I mean, they're sitting at 5-7 right now. They're 1-6 against teams above 500, and they are 4-1 against teams below 500. So they've only had 5 games through 12 weeks, and with no bye week, by the way, against teams below 500, no bye week. And they've played against 3 teams coming off their bye week and another team, and I think 2 other teams coming off of like mini buys. Like, it's been a brutal schedule for the Colts. I'm not saying that anything changes if they had an easier schedule, because they have their own issues right now. But this is a chance for them to prove that they are better than their 5-7 in these past 5 weeks. Like, even if they go 4-1 or 5-0 would be great, but 4-1 or 3-2, whatever it is, and finish kind of like, with a winning record here, it shows that you're at least above that bottom tier of the NFL, like you've been playing in recent weeks, because the schedule's kind of been brutal. So I hope they can go 5-0. I do think it's relatively realistic, especially with the way Richardson's played the last 2 weeks, but they got to show up to these games. They can't take it easy. I mean, we're talking about these as, I don't want to say like gimme wins but like winnable games down the stretch, but the Titans was a 1-score game when they played them earlier this season. The Jaguars was a loss to a below average team. So there certainly is ways this could go bad for the Colts, but I like their chances. I do think they are more of a middle class team in the NFL right now. And they play 4 teams that are below that middle class in this final stretch. And then 1 team that's probably in like the upper end of that middle class in the Broncos. So I think they have a pretty good chance as long as they show up and play competitive in each of these games.
I agree with you. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. I do think that this is a real possibility. But I mean, let's be honest. You and I both know what's going to happen. Okay.
They're going to beat the Broncos and lose to the Titans.
They're going to lose to the Jags in week 18. That's undoubtedly what's going to happen. Like, yep. They're going to call a swing pass to Tyler Goodson, and that'll be it. We'll be like, oh, that's the game. Game's over. We're not winning now.
How many Chris Ballard teams have their season decided in the final week of the season? Like, it's crazy how often it's happened. Like, this is what, year 8 for him, year 7 for him, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I know the Andrew Luck season, the playoffs were determined on the last week. The Phillip Rivers season, I think playoffs were determined in the last week. Carson Wentz season for sure. And then that's 4 of the seasons was the last week of the year. It came down to that final week for the Colts. It's crazy how it always is that it could be an 11-win team, it could be a 9-win team. It always is that final week to get to like the 7th seed each time too. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm ready for it. Like, I'm prepared for the heartbreak because it's coming. They'll find a way to lose one of those games. Zach, thanks for your time, man. As always, have a good Thanksgiving. Stay on the couch, watch a lot of football, eat a lot of good food, do all the good things that we do on Thanksgiving, man.
Heck yeah, you have a good one, bud.
You too. See you. That is Zach Hicks. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks2. You can check him out Locked On Colts. They got a YouTube channel. You can find that podcast wherever you get your podcast as well. Coming up in about 10 minutes, Zack Gray is going to join. We're going to talk college basketball bets and Ohio State, Indiana, all that good stuff. But before we do that, when we come back from break, I'm going to give you my Kirk Cousins bet of the week.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. We've got NFL games starting on Thursday, and every week we do the Kirk Cousins bet of the week. We missed it on Sunday. We had the Niners on the road against the Packers. For my new listeners, the Kirk Cousins bet of the week is we take a road underdog on the money line. We are now 3-2 on the season, and we do this because of this amazing quote from Kirk Cousins, where he explained that when you go on the road, you have to walk in someone's trap and take over their trap. So ever since then, we've been doing the Kirk Cousins bet of the week.
Walk into your trap, take over your trap, was the line he would say. Do you go into someone else's stadium and you try to assert yourself?
That quote right there birthed this awesome segment that we do every week. So this week, a lot of good options, and I narrowed it down to two, and I winded up going with the Thursday night game, Miami at Green Bay. We're taking the Dolphins on the money line. They are 3-point underdogs. The Dolphins are rolling. I know it's a cold weather game. We're going to hear about that during that entire game. But look, they went to Buffalo a couple weeks ago and scored 27 points. Tua looked good. The Dolphins have looked awesome ever since he came back. I don't trust Jordan Love to not throw an interception. This game is during a short week, right? Only 3 days of rest between games. So these games tend to be a little bit uglier. So I like the idea of Jordan Love throwing an interception or two. I think that'll be the difference in the game. The Dolphins win a cold game on the road. We're taking the Miami Dolphins on the money line for this week's Kirk Cousins bet of the week. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Zack Gray is going to give you more bets. Best college basketball gambler I know. So we're going to get into Feast Week, bets to make, and then, of course, he is an Ohio State fan, so we're going to talk Indiana and Ohio State. So when we come back here in 4 minutes, Zack Gray will be on the line.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. So we had a guy on last week who goes by the name Zack Gray. He's the best sports gambler I know. He definitely bets college basketball better than anyone else that I know. You should go follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine and check out the Patreon linked in his bio where he gives you tools for you to make better bets. And he came on the show and, he just told us how it was. He said Ohio State was simply just more talented than Indiana. And because of that, they were going to win. And that is exactly what happened. Zack Gray joins the show now. Zack, What's going on, man?
My rhythm's off, Jay Smith. It's a Tuesday. It feels like a Friday because I knew what was coming today. It's just I feel good, but this is just a different vibe for me right now.
It is a little different, but I would have had you on later in the week, but I'm off tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. So this was the best time to do it. And it does fly like a Friday. It's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I am going, just so you guys know, I am going to take a victory lap once we start getting into this.
So let's get into it. So look, you were exactly right. Ohio State won the game because on the perimeter they were vastly superior to Indiana. Like I thought Indiana did a good job of stopping the run. Like Judkins only averaged like 2.5 yards a carry. Henderson had the long, 39-yard run, but outside of that, he was at like 3.5 yards a carry. So Indiana's front seven, I thought, was fine. The difference was Indiana just didn't have the guys in the secondary to defend these NFL wide receivers that Ohio State has.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point I was hammering home the last time we spoke, is that I don't think it was a schematic issue, or I don't think the issue was, how the plays were being called or what the game plan was. I was really focusing on the athletic advantage. And at a certain point, you kind of saw the separation that I was speaking about. And, dudes are just going to be dudes. And it's not like Ohio State was going to come in flat to that game. They had heard their Indiana's coach, talk all year. They've heard everything that the media said about them. Like, they were going to come out focused and ready to play. And when a team is superior physically and athletically, like, that's the result you get. And I saw that right away. And, I understand the Indiana rhetoric around, the chance of them to win or keep this close. But to me, that Michigan-Indiana game was a big sign for me that, oh, look, they're not physically ready for this.
Yeah, and you were, like I said, you were exactly right. Did you see, because I want your opinion on this. So, I've got the YouTube channel that's separate from the show now, Shooting the Schmidt, for those of you who don't know. And I talked a little bit about the college football playoff and that Ohio State and Indiana game. I would still rank, look, if I had to rank teams right now, I would rank Indiana 6th. I feel like that's where they should be. Do you agree with that? Let's start there.
So I don't think they should be that high, but I also think, like, just because Indiana lost to clearly one of the best two teams in the country, that doesn't mean they stink or that they're bad. And like this idea that a loss against Ohio State, who's ranked number 2 in the nation, is somehow worse than some of these teams losing to unranked teams
like Northern Illinois.
Just because they're south of the Mason-Dixon line, that doesn't make sense to me. So
Yeah.
I think Indiana should definitely be in the top 12, should make the playoff, especially with the help they got on Saturday. So it's kind of bittersweet, I'm sure, for Indiana fans, because you look up and now you're on the chopping block, and then you see Ole Miss go down, you see Alabama go down, and now you're kind of back where you were. And that the loss is kind of, to me at least, and I think this is how it'll shake out, the loss is kind of wiped free. You don't have to worry about it. You go and beat Purdue like you should, and then you're in the playoff. I don't know about 6th, but because I know that Notre Dame did lose to Northern Illinois, but I think they're just a better team. I think it's the same kind of deal with Notre Dame when we're comparing to Indiana as it was with Ohio State. Just physically, athletically, I think they're just better. I think they're built more for a 4-quarter game at the top of the sport.
That's totally fair. Joined by Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. He's a professional sports gambler. Bets college basketball better than anyone else. So if you want to hit bets during feast week, that is the guy you follow. Check out his Patreon, which is linked in his bio, to get all the tools he uses to make his bets. So
Jay Smith, we got crushed yesterday. Just let it. We're transparent over here.
That's
We're
good.
transparent.
I'm glad.
We're not one of those guys that are going to tell you that we win every single day. We got annihilated yesterday. There are about 4 games there. We lost 3 by the hook, a couple choke jobs in there. That's the way the game is, though. You can't win every day, and I just want to let everyone know that while I do win a lot, I'll have losing days. And I am a transparent gambling influencer. I'll give you the real every day.
Nice, which is good. That's why we have you on. So I'm so glad you brought up that losing to one of the two best teams in the country in Ohio State shouldn't be like a damning thing for Indiana. Do you know what the average margin of victory is over the course of the 30 college football playoff games that we've played over the last decade? Do you know what the average margin of victory is?
Is it 15 plus?
18.5. That is a 3-possession game. And like, I know that people don't want to think in these terms because it's sad. And it's like, why would I watch the playoff if this is true, even though it is? Like what we saw in Columbus on Saturday looks like a lot of the college football playoff games between the 4 best teams in the country over the last 10 years. And so I completely agree that a loss to Ohio State, even though it wasn't close, shouldn't, drop Indiana out of the playoff, especially with all those other teams losing. My question is, like, with Ole Miss and Alabama and Texas A&M all having 3 losses, I no longer envy the college football playoff committee because I don't know how they're going to fill out that 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th spot. I have no idea. What do you kind of think that they're going to do towards kind of the bottom half of the rankings tonight?
I'm right there with you. It's getting tricky, but I think it's very low stakes compared to taking out an undefeated FSU team in a 14 playoff. You would say, like,
yeah, that's fair.
At the end of the day, like, whatever they decide to do tonight, again, it's starting to matter more based on, college football conference championships coming up. But it's really tough when this is the issue, right? I was a proponent of the 12-team playoff. I just think we're seeing the good parts about it, where more games are mattering. Like a 2-loss Ole Miss playing Florida matters now. Things like that. But we're also seeing some mediocrity towards the bottom there. Like Clemson's in the mix. Really? Like, what are we doing?
I have them ranked 12th. If I had to fill out a ballot, I've got Clemson at 12, which is just like, is annoying because they haven't beaten anybody good all year.
And the group of 5 conversation is interesting too, because I am not totally convinced that Tulane is not better than Boise State right now.
Okay, Boise State. You're really gonna get me going here, Zach. The whole like Boise State love thing, where the thing that bothers me, Boise State hasn't beaten anyone good, and that's kind of the knock against Indiana. Where it's like, look, like if you're gonna say Indiana hasn't played anybody or beaten anybody good, then you have to say the same thing about Boise State, because their schedule, aside from Oregon, who they did play close, it's a cakewalk. It's easier than IU's. And so Boise State. And you're right about Tulane. Tulane's a good football team.
I can't believe they have Boise State getting a bye right now. That's wild.
Well, it's because BYU lost. Like, that's kind of – and you're right. Like, that is wild. Like, do you think part of it is because they have Ashton Jeanty?
Yeah, 100%. I think that Oregon game was a perfect mix of Jeanty, exploding onto the scene. Oregon still trying to figure out their offensive line, what they're doing, as a team. And I think it just hit right at the right time. And that has just kind of been the lasting memory of Boise State. If we're being honest with you, Jeanty's been just kind of normal for like the last month plus, and Boise State hasn't looked great. So we're really hanging on to a week 2 matchup. Rightfully so, like that has to hold weight. But at some point we have to look at, the larger sample size and realize, yeah, they're a good team and they can give any team, fits for a little bit. But we have to have the discussion. Tulane is doing a similar thing right now. They're steamrolling teams. It's just college football is in a weird spot because the schedules I feel like the schedules being so uneven is actually like more of an issue now with the 12-team playoff than it was with a 14 playoff. It just feels like there's no common ground to stand on, because you could argue one thing and the next person could argue the exact opposite thing and still be like have enough evidence to like prove it. And like, it's just very strange right now. I think when we get to 14, it kind of makes more sense. Me and my buddy Michael Tracy were kind of hashing that out. 14 feels like the right number. 12 seems like it's kind of teetering between, leaving some teams out that shouldn't be out and kind of having some weird seeding. 14 feels right. Right now, it's just like, I look at it and it's like Boise State getting a bye, like that can't be right. That shouldn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 14. Joined by Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG The Grapevine. He's a professional sports gambler. He has a Patreon linked in his bio where you can get access to all the tools that he uses to make winning bets. 14. I think the right number is 6, and they'll never cut it down to 6. But I don't know. I think what you said earlier is right though. Like the fact that Clemson could get in, like if you go to 14, then they're probably in. And I don't know. Do you want to? So let me ask you this:
you either have to let all of the teams that are in that clump from like 9 through, or from like 8 through 14 in, or you have to cut it down. Like I just feel like there's not enough evidence or data to separate like 8 through 12. And I didn't even think about that when the 12-team playoff came out. So I think you just got to let those teams in and then add those 2 spots. And like, are we really going to argue over who the 14th seed is as much as we're arguing about who gets the home game? Like it's a little different there, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like people are going to argue about who's the 12th seed. And I just feel like no matter who gets left out, like they're going to have a case to be let in. And that's the thing that I liked about the 14 playoff. Like whoever was 5th kind of had a case, but most of the time it was pretty cut and dry of like, okay, I think everyone mostly agrees that these are the 4 best teams. And I feel like as you expand it and you allow more teams in, like obviously the quality of the team drops. And so therefore more teams I think have an argument to be in.
Yeah, but like also it's doing exactly what it was supposed to do. We're all talking about it every single day.
Yeah, you're right. And that's I don't know, like the idea of Alabama, which is a really weird team to use in this scenario, but like 3-loss Alabama, who's lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Like if you go to 14 teams, then they probably have a chance at a national title. And I just don't think that a team that's lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma in the same year should have a chance to win a title. You know what I mean?
Well, why? Why is that?
Because they're clearly not the best team.
But do we agree that the best team wins every playoff in all of the different sports every year?
For the most part, I mean, I think in college football, that's usually the case.
What about other sports that we haven't really seen this style of playoff in college football? So like, let's take the NFL, for example. Like, does the best team win it every year?
I would argue that that's different because the gap between NFL teams is much closer than the gap between college football teams.
But the idea though is that just because you may have blemishes on your record, if you are good enough to make the final tournament to determine a champion, you have a chance to win it. And I think the reward there is that you have a chance, not that you will or that you should, but the idea that you competed against these 100 and something schools and you are in the top 20 or whatever, top 15, top 10, whatever it is. I feel like that's enough to at least gain access to the idea and the ability to win a championship. We do that for every sport. Like this is back to my idea, like college football, 18 to 24-year-olds or however, 48-year-olds now, I guess, with like 19-year seniors. Yeah. But my point is like this is the only sport where we demand perfection. And to me, that's never been the case with sports. We've never expected any teams in any sport outside of college football to be perfect. And I think we've seen time and time again in these other leagues and these other sports, like, for example, a couple years ago, Ole Miss won the College World Series and they didn't even host a super. They didn't even host a regional. Like there's many cases of teams that have kind of figured it out towards the end, did just enough to get into the field and make a run. Like, to me, that's exactly what we've been asking for when we get Alabama, Clemson forever. And then we start just seeing, Georgia take over. Like, we're all like, oh, this is, it's Georgia's national title. Like, the idea that we get the chance is, I feel like everybody wanted that. And now that we have it, it's not good enough anymore. It's like the reversal.
Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler and friend of the program. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Check out the Patreon linked in his bio, where you can get access to all the tools that he uses to make winning bets. So let me ask you, like how does 14 teams accomplish that as opposed to 12? Because I feel like with the 12 right now, like it is accomplished that we're allowing teams that get hot late. A team like South Carolina, who's kind of figured it out late, I have them 11th. Like there's a decent chance that if they beat Clemson on Saturday, that they'll have a real case. So like I still think that we kind of have that embedded in it, if that makes it. Yeah, if that makes sense.
It just lets things breathe a little more. I feel like we're in the middle ground of like you said, 6 would be great. I think 12 is like a weird situation. I think 14 kind of makes things breathe a little more. Like Indiana should be in a 12-team field, but there's discussion that they shouldn't be. And if they're left out, that's a problem. So it allows teams to kind of have those blemishes, as I talked about, and it kind of opens up the field. And I think it gives a clear picture, because I think the difference between, 1 through 14 going 15 to 30 is bigger than it is when we're talking, 12 to 14. You see what I'm saying? Like, who's 15 right now?
Ole Miss.
Who's 16?
South Carolina.
So does South Carolina deserve a playoff bid?
I would argue.
Would we fight as hard for South Carolina to be in this scenario than we would, Arizona State or BYU like last week?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's kind of why I don't like, I just feel like no matter what the number is, we're going to have arguments like this. And the more we expand it, the more arguments that we're going to have. Like I don't think that there's, you were talking about how like teams 8 through 14, right? Like they're all pretty similar. Right? Yeah. And like, is there really that big of it? So Arizona State's 14th. And like, let's say that they cut them off there. Like, do you think that like Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Iowa State and Tulane fans would be okay with that? Do you think they'd be like, there's a pretty obvious drop off? Like, I don't think that there would be. I think that no matter how many teams we have, like we're going to have discussions like this, which is good.
In a 14 playoff, right? I think the idea there is that there would only be 2 byes. 1 and 2 would get a bye. Is that right?
I don't know how that sounds right.
That first round would be home games.
Yes. And
then you would get into like the New Year's Six Bowls after that. I mean, to me, that's a better system, just strictly because it's the best 4 conference champions get a bye. To me, is silly. I don't like that. I think that's not the uneven schedules, as we talked about, but I think even a 14-team playoff where the 1 and 2 get a bye and the rest are seeded accordingly, that just makes things more natural. Like the idea that Boise State is 12th in the rankings but going to get a 4 seed in the playoff, that right there alone is just kind of like weird. But in the scenario where there's a 14-team playoff, they would just be the 12 seed, and like that's normal. And I think the idea that Ohio State, or Oregon, whoever wins the Big Ten title, is going to get a 5 seed when they realistically should probably be 1 and 2 regardless. Like that just doesn't make sense. Both those teams should get a bye in a 14-team playoff. And then if you don't have to worry about the top 4 conference champions going, being seeded top 4, it makes the rankings shake out just more even, more natural. You don't get these weird setups where the 5 seed is actually better than getting a bye in the first round, or that like being the 1 seed. Like that's kind of the point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Joined by Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. He's a professional sports gambler. He has a Patreon linked in his bio that allows you to use the same tools he uses to make winning bets. So what if I really like the idea? I like your idea of the 1 and 2 seed being the only teams with a bye, kind of cut the whole conference champion stuff. What if we cut it down? Like, what if we went to 10 teams and we cut it at 10? Because I do think that there's usually a decent drop off from 10 to 11, like Indiana and Boise State. That's who's there right now. Clemson's 12th. And so what if we went top 10 teams and the top 2 seeds get a bye?
I don't I personally am, like I said, I'm okay. 12 is weird for me. I like it. I think it's been entertaining. But like after watching the shows and like seeing the bracket shake out, to me, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. So 10 would make more sense, similar to the 14. I think the 12 is just kind of weird now that we're talking it out.
Yeah, I get it. It is a little weird. I don't like the way that the buys work and the 5 automatic bids. I'm with you on that completely.
What's the point there? Just to reward conference champions?
I think so, which I don't mind, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that works if there's a clear 4. Like if all 4 conferences are similar. But we all know, like, that 4th conference champion isn't really deserving of a bye.
That's obvious this year. Like, unless it's SMU, because SMU is good. I don't know how much you've seen them play. I really like them. I think they're better than Miami, but I guess we'll find that out here in a couple weeks. But yeah, for the most part, I think most years you're right, because like the SEC and the Big Ten are just on a different level than the ACC and the Big 12, which I think is pretty obvious this year.
Yeah, but it's cool though. Like, the fact that we're having this discussion and the fact that we're talking about more teams is good for college football at the end of the day. They are going to probably change it to 14 here after the deal's over in 2 years, I believe. So that'll be something different that we can talk about. But I do like talking about Indiana. In a 14 playoff, nobody's putting Indiana in the playoff. Like, the 12-team playoff is directly benefiting teams like Indiana, teams like Boise State, teams like Arizona State that are coming out of nowhere and have a chance to win their conference and then have a chance to play for a national title. Like, those are all good things, but there are some strange and weird scenarios going on. There's some politicking going on where, I'm hoping, and I know we talked about this on last week's show, I'm hoping the logic prevails and the bias gets kicked out of the room when they're discussing. But there are several positive things that we can take from this format that is good for the sport. I think you'd agree with that.
I do. I do agree with that. I agree on the name bias stuff, because I do think that's an issue. Not even just with SEC teams. Like, I think Miami's benefiting from that. I think Notre Dame is as well. Clemson maybe a little bit too.
Penn State.
Oh, dude, don't get me started on Penn State, Zach. I'm way over on time, and I'll go way, way over if you get me started on Penn State. I do really need to go, though. I was supposed to be out like 5 minutes ago, man.
Sorry, producer.
Oh, no. I am the producer, which is great. That's why I was able to keep going. Dude, it's just me in here. It's great. It's just me and a microphone, and I've got Cowherd up on the TV to have something to look at from time to time.
Draw some inspiration.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. Zach, thanks for your time, man. As always, you are the man. Congrats on your Buckeyes just kicking Indiana to the curb.
Happy Thanksgiving, bro. I'm sure we'll talk soon, but if I don't talk to you, happy Thanksgiving, and I appreciate you having me on every week. I'm thankful for that.
Of course, man. Of course. I'm thankful for you coming on. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm sure we'll talk. It's feast week, man. We're gonna be talking about the games as always. I'll talk to you later, man. See ya.
See you, Jay Smith.
That is Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine, professional sports gambler. He's got all of his stuff linked in his bio. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, that's right, I'm not done yet. Speaking of Thanksgiving, I'm gonna list out things that the sports teams around Indianapolis should be thankful for. That's coming your way here in about 3 minutes.
this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
You must think I'm dumb.
You'll probably beat up in the bus stop most of the time.
Playoffs? You kidding me?
That's a clown question, bro.
Shut your yap. I can say anything I want. That's the beauty of this country. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game.
What do you care? If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
You would call fast place. Block.
In my entire adult life, I've never used the expression game face.
You believe in miracles?
See how your mom called it. There will be some people inconvenienced, and if it happens to be their fat little girlfriends, too bad.
This is the Dan Dockett Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app. Here's Dan.
It's not Dan, it's producer Jonathan. Thanks for taking the time to tune into the Dan Dockett Show. Dan is out today and the rest of the week. Today's my last day this week as well. And then, we're gonna celebrate Thanksgiving with our families. It's gonna be great. I can't wait to do that. Once again, Dan Dockett's out today. Jonathan Smith filling in for him for this first hour. So Thanksgiving coming up, I wanted to take some time to highlight all the different things that Colts fans and teams are thankful for. And I did this really with every team in and around the area. So the Colts, the Pacers, IU football, IU basketball, and Purdue. I've got things that all of these fans and organizations should be thankful for. So let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. Start with the 15th overall pick, Laiatu Latu. The Colts fans and that organization should be thankful for Laiatu Latu. He's been the best defensive lineman for the Colts this year. He's 5th on the Colts in tackles for loss. He's 2nd in quarterback hits. He's 3rd in sacks. He leads the team in forced fumbles. He leads the team in pressures. He leads the team in quarterback knockdowns, and he leads the team in quarterback hurries. He only has 4 sacks, but he's been productive. Okay, he is poised, I think, to kind of finish these final 5 games on a tear, because with the exception of the Broncos, every other team that the Colts play, Giants, Jaguars, Patriots, and Titans, don't have good offensive lines. So he can finish the year on a tear. I really hope that he does, because the Colts need him to be productive if they're going to go 5-0 and make the playoffs. So this Thursday, when you're saying thanks, make sure you're thankful for Laiatu Latu. Next, Colts fans are and should be thankful for Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. Colts fans bring those guys up, and the Colts themselves, Jim Irsay especially, bring up Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck in the good old days whenever they can. And, I get it, because we're having to watch Anthony Richardson play quarterback, and it's not always the prettiest thing in the world, and there's a lot of frustration, and there's a lot of losing, and it's just not fun. So I get it. Be thankful for Peyton Manning. Be thankful for Andrew Luck, because generational quarterbacks don't walk through the door every day like they did, when Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning showed up. The Colts should also be thankful for the easy schedule awarded to them by the NFL. The only reason the Colts have a chance at the playoffs is because of their schedule. Make no mistake about it. And they should be incredibly thankful for it. Playing the Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Jaguars, and Giants to end the year is an absolute blessing. It is the only reason they have any sort of chance at the playoffs. Okay, they obviously start that off, this easy stretch off with the Patriots. I wouldn't call it an easy stretch. Let's call it a very winnable stretch. They started off with the Patriots. That's a blessing. And this is a game that the Colts should win. All right, look, it's the NFL, so they could lose, but they should win. They're 3-point favorites on the road because the Patriots suck. No other way to put it. Okay, they are one of the worst teams in the NFL. All right, Drake May, young rookie quarterback, good player, shown flashes of potential throughout the year, but his offensive line's brutal. That's putting it nicely. Okay, this Colts defensive line should dominate the entire game, both the run and pass game, because once again, this Patriots offensive line is bad, and this Patriots defense just kind of continues to get worse and worse as the year progresses. So the offense should hopefully find a little bit of success. They should win Sunday and start this easier stretch of the season off on the right foot. So those are the 3 things that the Colts should be thankful for. The 3 things that the Pacers should be thankful for, first and foremost, is injuries to their opponents. It's the main reason why they made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Look, I love Halliburton. I love Siakam. I like Miles Turner. I like the way that the Pacers play basketball, but the only reason why they made the Eastern Conference Finals last year is because Giannis didn't play in that first series. That second series against the Knicks, a bunch of guys got hurt. And then, to close out, when they got closed out, it's because they played a completely healthy Boston Celtics team. So Pacers should be thankful for injuries to their opponents. The next thing that they should be thankful for is the Sacramento Kings and their desperate pursuit of the play-in tournament. The reason why they got rid of Tyrese Halliburton, who was awesome last night, is because the Kings, first and foremost, favored De'Aaron Fox, which doesn't make any sense, and they wanted Sabonis so they could make the play-in. And ever since that trade happened, the Pacers have made the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Kings had one good regular season where they were the 3 seed, got bounced in the first round, and haven't made it into the first round of the playoffs since. So thank you, Sacramento Kings, for your pursuit of the play-in tournament, because that's probably where they're going to wind up this year as well. The Pacers should also be thankful for the Pelicans and Wizards. Tyrese Halliburton has now had back-to-back impressive games. Pacers won both. Who would have thought? It's almost like when your best player plays well, you have a chance at winning games, okay? It's just, the way it goes. He looked good against the Wizards, 21 points and 9 assists, 5 of 11 from 3, shot it well. That's kind of been where he's really struggled this year, has just been shooting the basketball. And then last night he goes nuts. 34 points, 13 assists, 9 of 18 from 3 in a win. He might be back. And if he is, it's all thanks to the Wizards and the Pelicans for allowing him to find his groove. Moving on to the Purdue Boilermakers. What are they thankful for? First and foremost, they're thankful that football season's almost over. They're going to go 1-11, it seems like. Then again, rivalry games are weird. Maybe they show up inspired. This is their bowl game. This is their Super Bowl, so to speak, this game against Indiana. Maybe they go crazy. Maybe Hudson Card plays great. I doubt it, but Purdue fans are happy that football season's almost over. Purdue fans should also be thankful for Zach Edey's dominance these last 2 years. Look, it is incredibly rare for your favorite team to have the best player in something. It just is. Okay, like it's not uncommon for your favorite team to have a great player. The Colts had Peyton Manning. He was great, Hall of Famer, all those things. But he was never the best quarterback in the NFL because of Tom Brady. Purdue, meanwhile, had the best player in college basketball 2 years in a row. And they should be thankful for that because it'll likely never happen again. Purdue fans should also be thankful for Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer's experience. Purdue's going to win a couple games that they shouldn't this year because they have 2 junior guards who have started and played in a lot of meaningful games. Okay, like they're going to beat a couple teams this year that they aren't supposed to. For example, they beat Alabama at home, right? Because they have the experience and they have 2 guards who, when they're playing well, aren't going to turn the ball over. And if you want to beat teams that you shouldn't beat, you first and foremost have to avoid turning the ball over. Okay. Moving on to Indiana football. What should they be thankful for? Right? What should Indiana football be thankful for? A lot of things, but I had to narrow it down to just 3. Obviously, they should be thankful for Curt Cignetti and him signing an extension. Curt Cignetti could have left for any other job in the country. He could have picked up the phone and said, hey, you know what place has nice weather? Florida. Let's go to Gainesville. And he could have gone down there. They'd have given him, probably a similar deal to what, the extension that he signed. But Curt Cignetti decided to stay in Bloomington. Don't blame him. It's a really nice town. He decided to stay there. He decided to stay at a football program that's never won anything. And Indiana fans should be incredibly thankful for that because it is so much fun to have a good college football team. I miss it. Indiana fans should also be thankful for, and I guess the Indiana football team as well, they should also be thankful for their easy schedule. Okay. Curt Cignetti's extension and a potential spot in the college football playoff, we'll know more tonight, wouldn't be possible without this easy schedule that they were given by the Big Ten. If they had drawn Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, or just 2 of the 3, their college football playoff chances wouldn't look too great because I'm just going to assume that they wouldn't beat Penn State or Oregon. But then again, they haven't played the game, so who knows? Right? So they should, when you're saying grace on Thursday for the wonderful food that you're going to eat, make sure you thank the good Lord for the easy schedule that Indiana got. All right. Indiana football should also be thankful for conference expansion and the expansion of the college football playoff from 4 to 12 teams. Okay. two more reasons why they have a shot at the college football playoff. Right? The expansion of the conference to 18 teams is what enabled Indiana to have this incredibly easy schedule. And the expansion of the playoff from 4 teams to 12 teams is what is allowing Indiana to be in. Because if it was just 4 teams, they would not be in. They would not. So there's that. And then finally, what 3 things should Indiana basketball be thankful for? They should be thankful for Coach Bobby Knight, because without him, they would be irrelevant. It's really the only time, I'm not going to say the only time, because I think they won a national title before he got there. But like he is the most, I feel like when I talk to people about Indiana basketball that are not from Indiana, we talk more about Coach Knight and those teams than we do about the teams from the last 20 years. That's just the reality of it. Without him, their basketball program would be irrelevant, even now. So, say thanks for Coach Knight. The transfer portal, that's really the thing that Indiana basketball fans should be thankful for. Because if Indiana, if this was the old days where everyone just kind of came back, Indiana would not be very good this year. Okay? If Indiana had to run back the same guys as last year, they would not be ranked 14th in the country like they are right now. They were not talented last year. They were not a good basketball team last year. Trey Galloway was one of their best players, and he's coming off the bench now. Okay? Be thankful for the transfer portal, Indiana fans, because it's the only reason why you're good this year. Indiana fans should also be thankful for wine and cigars. And I say that because Mike Whitson is thankful for them. So you should be too. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, it is Tuesday. I do this every Tuesday on my show from 10 to noon. I give you the top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL at the conclusion of the week. I'm going to do that again when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
back to the Dan Dockett Show, presented by Moondrops Distillery on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app.
No Dan Dockett today. It's Jonathan Smith, the normal producer, filling in for Dan. Talking a little more NFL, hit a little bit on the Colts and the Pacers and what everyone should be thankful for in the world of sports around Indianapolis. And, you know, there's a lot to be thankful for. Not really, because the Colts aren't very good. But here are some teams that are good. Here are the 10 best teams in the NFL after Week 12, starting with number 10, the Minnesota Vikings. Okay? They almost blew a game to the Bears on Sunday, and the Bears are a little up and down. I don't know. I think the Bears are probably a little bit better than what their record is, but Sam Darnold, that's really why I have them at 10. He's been better these last 2 weeks, not turning the ball over. I still don't trust him. You know, when he plays well, they can beat anyone. I just don't know when he's going to play well. They're a little bit like Georgia in college football, where when the quarterback's great, they're great and can beat anybody because the defense is good no matter what. I just don't know what I'm going to get from Sam Darnold every week, so I've got them down at 10. Number 9, the Miami Dolphins. These are not standings. These are the best teams in the NFL. And ever since Tua has come back, the Miami Dolphins have been the 9th best team in the NFL. Okay, the Dolphins have as many 3-and-outs since Tua's return as they do games where they haven't punted. One. They've had 1 3-and-out since he came back, and they've had 1 game where they didn't punt. Okay, they've won 3 in a row. They've got a really good chance at kind of running the table, making the playoffs, because their schedule is pretty easy, right? You know, they had the Packers tomorrow night, Thursday night. And, you know, if they win that one, then it's really easy from there. So we'll see what they have to do. The Dolphins at 9. Number 8, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they lost to the Browns. It was a snow game. Snow games are weird. And George Pickens was more concerned with fighting, you know, the defensive backs of the Cleveland Browns than actually catching the football. So if they can figure that out, they'll be fine. If they can play games where it doesn't snow a ton, they'll be fine. Russell Wilson has made the offense better. That defense is, I don't think I trust a defensive unit in the league more than I trust the Steelers and everything that they have. So got to roll with the Steelers there at 8. Number 7, I've got the Los Angeles Chargers. Good team. Really good team. I like their team a lot. I like Justin Herbert. As a Dolphins fan, it breaks my heart to watch him play, knowing that the Dolphins could have drafted him instead. Their defense has several good players, Joey Bosa kind of being the headliner, Khalil Mack on that team as well. They just don't have the weapons at receiver and tight end to compete with the better teams in the NFL. Like, Ladd McConkey's their best receiver. Come on now. Like, I like Ladd McConkey. Good player. Played at Georgia. Loved him in college, but he can't be your best receiver, and that's what he is. So, like, they need to be better there. I don't even know who any of their tight ends are. But I know that if your best receivers are Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, and Ladd McConkey, then you're going to struggle a little bit to throw the football, and it is a passing league. I feel like once the Chargers bring in some receivers that can really play, their Super Bowl window is going to open wide. I mean, it's going to be really wide because they've got 2 really good young offensive tackles, and obviously they've got a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. Number 6, I've got the Green Bay Packers. They just took it to the hindered 49ers on Sunday. Okay, Jordan Love wasn't great, but he didn't turn the ball over. That's a big deal for him, right? They continue to run the ball well. Josh Jacobs deserves a lot more attention than what he's getting. Like, you know, I get it. Derrick Henry's been awesome, and Saquon Barkley's been awesome. We're going to talk about both of them here pretty soon. But like, Josh Jacobs has been great for them. That defense is really good. Xavier McKinney has 7 interceptions on the year. Like, he's having a good year. The question for the Packers and why I don't have them higher is Jordan Love's a bit of a gunslinger, and he's very capable of turning the football over. When he doesn't, they beat a lot of good teams. When he plays well and he doesn't turn it over, they can beat anybody. The question is, like, I don't know what I'm going to get from him week in and week out. Number 5, the team that dominated last night, the Baltimore Ravens. This offense is just dynamic. Derrick Henry's awesome. Lamar Jackson could win the MVP again. Like, I don't have to explain to you how good that Ravens offense is. I mean, they played their number 1 scoring defense in the NFL last night, and they dropped 37 on them. Okay, so I think that in and of itself, I think delivers the message of how good this Ravens offense is. Or excuse me, 30. They didn't score 37. They scored 30. My bad. But they just, I don't have to explain to you how good that offense is. Defensively, though, I have questions. They've been better the last 2 weeks, but they do still have one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL. It helps that they played the Steelers 2 weeks ago and the Chargers, who don't have very many good receivers. So they played the Eagles this week. I think we'll kind of have a better idea on whether or not the Ravens have improved defensively on the back end or if they're just playing lesser opponents, and that's why they've been better these past couple weeks. We'll see. But the Baltimore Ravens are sitting there at 5. Number 4, I have the Eagles, who once again play the Ravens on Sunday. And I hate that I have the Eagles at 4 because as much as I don't trust Nick Sirianni, they're a good football team. They have the best or second best offensive line in the NFL. It's them or Detroit. Saquon Barkley's been awesome this year. He's getting some MVP buzz. That's all he's going to get. They're not going to give him the MVP, and they shouldn't because he's a running back, and the most valuable player is always going to be a quarterback. That is the name of the award. Anyway, Jalen Hurts, he's having one of the best years of his career. He currently has a career high in completion percentage at 69%. Nice passer rating, and he's on pace to set a career high in rushing touchdowns. Okay, his touchdown to turnover ratio between fumbles, interceptions, and rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns is 23-9. It's really good. Their defense is good. Their front is nasty. And their secondary has come a long way. They got some young guys back there as the years progressed, and they've kind of started to understand everything that Vic Fangio throws at you. They've gotten better. So Eagles, really good football team. Number 3, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Seeing them narrowly beat the Panthers is going to be concerning for some people. It's not for me. They're still the Chiefs. They're still 10-1. Okay, it's hard to knock them when they continue to win games. They scored 30 points against the Panthers, which is what they should have done. The issue is they gave up 27. Spagnuolo, he's going to make adjustments. He's going to get that defense fixed. They're talented. They're going to be fine. This is just who the Chiefs are. They just play to the level of their competition. And then in the fourth quarter, when they need a score or they need a stop, they always get it because they have the best defensive coordinator in the NFL and they have the best quarterback in the NFL. And here's what's going to happen. We're going to look up. It's going to be January. The playoffs are going to start. And we're going to be like, oh, wow, the Chiefs. Look at that. They're in the AFC Championship game. Who would have thought? They only beat the Panthers by 3, so I was a little concerned. No one's saying that, okay? They're fine. They're just being the Chiefs right now. When the playoffs come around, they'll turn it on. And once again, they're 10-1. And their one loss is to the second-ranked team in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills. They had a bye week, but nothing's changed for them. They beat the Chiefs by 2 possessions the last game that they played. Oh, and they didn't have Dalton Kincaid. That's their number 1 tight end who's a real threat in the receiving game. And they didn't have Keon Coleman, who's their second-best wide receiver. And it didn't matter. They still hung 30 up on a good Chiefs defense. And then defensively, they hold the Chiefs to only 21 points on the offensive side of the ball. So, yeah, Bills, really good team. They're about to bring back Matt Milano. He's going to return soon, and he'll make them better. Mark Cooper, great pickup. They can run the ball, and Josh Allen can put on the cape whenever he needs to. And then number 1, the Detroit Lions, the team that just throttled the Colts on Sunday. That game wasn't close. They win 24-6. If it makes you feel better, Colts fans, that's not the only team that the Lions have done this to, right? They beat the Jaguars 52-6. They beat the Titans 52-14. They beat the Cowboys 47-9. The Detroit Lions, man, they see the AFC South and they're like, oh, we're going to win. It doesn't matter what we do. We can throw 5 interceptions against the number 1 team in the AFC South, the Houston Texans, and we're still going to beat them because that's exactly what they did, which is still insane to me, right? And then they see the Colts and they beat them by 18, and then they see the Jaguars and they beat them by 40, and they do the same thing to the Titans. They're just crushing teams in the AFC South. The Lions love it when they see the AFC South, okay? But they haven't just beaten up on the awful AFC South. They've also beaten good teams like the Cardinals, the Vikings, the Texans, and the Packers, okay? The offense of the Lions gets a ton of attention, but the defense is good. Okay, they haven't allowed a touchdown in 10 quarters. So Darius Smith, he's playing now. It's a great pickup from Cleveland, and, they're as complete of a team as you'll find. And you'll also find on this list that there's not a single team from the AFC South on it. Not a single team. I've had the Houston Texans on here. I had them on here earlier in the year, but as the years progressed, they've gotten worse. Part of that's been injuries. Stephon Diggs tearing the ACL, out for the rest of the year. Nico Collins missed games with, a hamstring. He's back. Didn't help. They still lost to the Titans on Sunday with Nico Collins. And so, I don't know. It's like this Colts team, it just feels like they're wasting opportunity. It's really what it feels like, because this division is just bad. There's no way around it. This division is horrendous. The Texans are the best team in this division, and they're what, 6-5? I mean, seriously. And they're still going to win the division because of how awful the AFC South is. But the fact that the AFC South, I didn't even think about a team from the AFC South to put on this list. I definitely didn't think about the Titans or the Jags. Definitely didn't think about the Colts. And the Texans are just not very good right now. No other way to put it. And it's just like they've lost, I think 3 of their last 4, something like that. Yeah, they've lost 3 of their last 4. 4 of their last 6. I mean, they just aren't a very good football team. And we're sitting around and we're on year 8 of Chris Ballard, and the Colts aren't a very good football team either. And you sit around and you kind of look at this team and the Colts, and it's just like, what do all these other teams have that the Colts don't? First and foremost, they have good quarterbacks. The Colts don't have that right now. Maybe they will at some point. We'll see what ends up happening with Anthony Richardson. Got to give him time to develop and all those things. But that's one thing that all these teams have. They all have good defenses. There's not a team on here that you look at and you're like, yeah, that defense isn't very good. That's just the reality of it. And the Colts defense hasn't been very good under Gus Bradley, hasn't been very good under Chris Ballard in this regime. And it's time for a change. It's 8 straight years of this, 8 straight years of the season being decided in, 8 weeks, or excuse me, it's, 8 straight years of, feeling like the Colts season is decided in the final week of the season. And it's just like, they need better. And the Colts should expect better. This is a franchise that, had Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck and won a lot of games. And you would just think that the expectation from the organization itself and from Jim Irsay would be higher than what it is right now, because he's clearly content with going 9-8 every single year. And it's a really sad reality of where the Colts are. So, and nothing's going to change until Jim Irsay does. So I'm going to make myself happy. I'm going to focus on the Indiana football Hoosiers. The college football playoff top 12 is coming out tonight. As I do every Tuesday, I'm going to give you the most correct top 12 rankings of the college football playoff when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
back to the Dan Dockett Show, presented by Moondrops Distillery on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app.
No Dan Dockett today. It is Jonathan Smith, the normal producer. Hopefully you're having a nice week. I want to give you my top 12 college football teams because the college football playoff rankings come out tonight. But it's the last show of the week with Thanksgiving coming up. And I do this thing on my show usually on Fridays before the NFL week happens. I do this thing called the Kirk Cousins bet of the week, where I give you a road dog to take on the money line. So a team that's going to go on the road as an underdog and win. And the reason why I do it is because our guy, Kirk Cousins, had this amazing quote a few weeks ago that gave birth to this segment, really, because without the quote, this never would have happened. He had this quote where he said,
"Walk into your trap, take over your trap." Was the line he would say. You go into someone else's stadium and you try to assert yourself.
Kirk Cousins right there with just an awesome quote. Walk in your trap, take over your track. And ever since he said that, we've done the Kirk Cousins bet of the week. We're 3-2. We missed last week. Last week was tough. There just weren't any good bets on the board. This week, though, I feel a lot better. The team we're taking for the Kirk Cousins bet of the week this week is the Miami Dolphins, +3 on the road against the Packers. We're taking them on the money line. They are 3-point underdogs. It's like, Jonathan, why are we taking the Dolphins? First off, they're rolling right now. I know it's a cold weather game. We're going to hear about it all day Thursday leading up to it. They went to Buffalo a couple weeks ago, though. It was cold. They scored 27 points. I think they'll be fine. I just don't trust Jordan Love to not throw an interception against the Miami Dolphins, right? Short weeks usually lead to ugly games. That usually means turnovers. I think Jordan Love throws an interception or two, and that will be the difference in the game for the Dolphins to grab a win, improve to 6-6, and put some real pressure on the Colts to win out. Now, speaking of winning out, that's what Indiana needs to do because they're playing Purdue. And if they lose to Purdue, they're not going to make the college football playoff. Okay, like that's not happening, right? With a loss to Purdue, I mean, that's probably worse than a loss to Northern Illinois. It just is. And so at number one for my most correct college football playoff rankings, I have Oregon. Not hard. I think that's kind of who everybody has at number one. Best team in the country. They beat Ohio State at home by 1. Great game. I think those are pretty clearly the two best teams. So Oregon at 1. Number 2, Ohio State. They're the best roster in the country. I think we all realized how good they are on Saturday when they beat the dog out of Indiana. So they should have done the same thing to Penn State too, but Will Howard fumbled the ball through the back of the end zone, threw a bad pick 6. They're nasty. Like, if Ryan Day doesn't win a national title this year, I don't know when he's going to. I don't. Like, this team is absolutely loaded. Also, didn't know this. Caleb Downs, the guy who returned the punt for a touchdown against Indiana that plays for Ohio State, that's Josh Downs' brother. Didn't know that. The more you know. So Ohio State sitting there at number 2. Number 3, I've got Texas. I know their best wins over Vanderbilt, Michigan, or Arkansas. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're really good because I've watched them play. And last year they made the college football playoff with a lot of the same guys. So, they're going to have an opportunity on Saturday to prove me right when they play against Texas A&M. They're on the road for that game. So it'll be interesting. I think they're only like 3-point favorites. A&M, that's a good team. They'll be riled up. That game's going to be awesome. Cannot wait to watch that game on Saturday. 4th, I've got Georgia. Georgia at their best can beat anyone in the country. Anyone. Like, even the teams ranked in front of them. The question is just whether or not they're going to play their best. Okay, the 2 times that they've lost have been to good teams and when Carson Beck was bad. Right? They are very similar to the Green Bay Packers. Right? Like, when Jordan Love plays well and he's throwing the ball on time and on target and he's not turning the ball over, the Packers win a lot of games. Georgia's the exact same way. When Carson Beck is throwing the ball on time and on target and he's not turning the football over, they can beat anybody. Right? So we'll see. I've gotten there at 4. I don't care that they've lost 2 games. That's where they belong. At number 5, I've got Tennessee, the Volunteers. They're incredibly good as well. I think people have kind of come off of them a little bit. Josh Heupel can really coach. They started the year off really well. People were excited, and then they lost to Arkansas, and no one's really talked about them since, but they've got that win over Alabama, that's their best win. They have a lot of talent. The offense is explosive. They have more NFL players on defense than they do offense. Once again, they've got that win over Alabama. The loss to Arkansas is weird, but they've crushed every other bad team that they've played, and they're just really good at football. So I've got them at 5. 6th is where I have Indiana. Is this where the College Football Playoff Committee is going to rank them? No. They'll probably put them around 8 or 9 if I had to guess. But once again, those are the College Football Playoff Committee rankings. These are the most accurate rankings, right? This is the most real list, even though it doesn't mean anything. Anyway, I've got Indiana 6. They're still a good team. They've crushed every team they've played, with obviously the exception of Ohio State. They still have an efficient offense. Their front seven's awesome, as we saw against Ohio State. They just didn't have the talent on the perimeter or in the secondary to deal with Ohio State. And that's an issue that they could run into against some of these other teams as well. But at the same time, they're 10-1, with their one loss being to Ohio State. Okay, Penn State, I've got them ranked lower because I don't think Penn State's as good as Indiana. But the committee's going to rank them like 4th. And if they rank them 4th, then I'm not sorry. They are going to rank them 4th. They're going to rank Penn State 4th, and I'm going to be upset. And that'll kind of be that. So Indiana sitting there at 6 because this is just a good football team. I don't care that they lost by 3 possessions to Ohio State. The average margin of victory of college football playoff games is 18.5 points. It's 3 possessions. It's exactly what we saw on Saturday. Indiana is still one of the best teams in the country, and a loss to Ohio State on the road in Columbus is not going to change my mind on that. Number 7, I've got Notre Dame. The loss to Northern Illinois has to matter at some point. Like it does. It's the worst loss of any team vying for a playoff spot. Okay. Now look, they've looked a lot better since then, right? They're clearly one of the 10 best teams in the country. That win over Texas A&M is still impressive, but they haven't played anyone great outside of that. Like, sure, Army and Navy are good, but I don't know. They're playing the American Conference. I think there's a lot of teams that would go undefeated in the American Conference. So I don't know. We'll kind of see how they look. They've made light work of the bad teams on their schedule, with the exception of Northern Illinois. So we're going to stick them there at 7. Number 8 is where I have Penn State. They just aren't dominant. Like that's the thing for me with Indiana and Penn State. Like, Indiana is beating the crap out of all of these teams that they've played that are clearly not as good as them. And Penn State's not doing the same thing. Penn State beat Minnesota by 1 on Saturday. They beat USC by 3 earlier in the year. And they beat Bowling Green by a touchdown. Like, they just don't wow me. Like, they just aren't explosive enough on the offensive side of the football to compete with the better teams in the country. The defense is good. The defense is talented. There's no doubt about that. But when you look at the offense, it's lacking. It is just simply lacking in any and every area. Like I don't know. Like, if Indiana played Penn State today, like I think Indiana would beat them. I really do. So I've got Penn State sitting down there at 8. And then we get to the really hard part. Like 9, 10, 11, and 12. Good luck. I don't even know. I've got SMU 9th because their one loss is to BYU, and it's not as bad as the losses of the teams below them. That's really why. Like, they're explosive on offense. They've got, a couple good wins. They just don't have any great wins. Like, they beat Louisville, which, like, that win's fine. I don't know. Like, they're in the ACC championship game. They're going to play Miami or Clemson. That's really when we're going to know whether or not they're good, right? What I do know is they score a lot of points. Kevin Jennings is good. And that's kind of the basis of my argument. And Miami, who I have ranked 10th, it's kind of the same thing. They're very similar to SMU. They don't have any great wins, but they're explosive on offense. They've got a couple good wins. They beat Louisville and whatever, and they just haven't blown out teams like SMU has. And they lost to Georgia Tech, and that's a worse loss to SMU's loss to BYU. I hate how we're comparing losses. This is where, this whole 12-team playoff thing loses me. Because, I don't know. I don't want to compare losses. I just want the best teams to be in. And, yeah, it's frustrating. Anyway, I have South Carolina at 11, who I would pick to beat Miami and SMU. But, look, they have 3 losses, and I just have a hard time ranking them in front of Miami and SMU with 3 losses. So, and when you look at their losses, they aren't bad. Like, other losses are close to good teams, whereas the other 3 lost SEC teams The losses aren't as good, which is a weird thing to say. Like Alabama lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Ole Miss lost to Florida and Kentucky. Texas A&M lost to Auburn and got crushed by South Carolina. So, like, South Carolina's losses aren't that bad, and they're all close. And I just think they're really good. Like, they're nasty up front on the defensive line. The quarterback's explosive in the run and pass game. They're just a good team. And if they beat Clemson on Saturday, I think they'll have a legitimate case to make the playoff. And yeah, we'll see. So maybe the game on Saturday is a playing game, because Clemson and South Carolina play Saturday, and I have Clemson ranked 12th. They're also 12th in the AP poll. Clemson got crushed by Georgia to start the year, and then they went on this long win streak where they just beat a bunch of bad teams, and then they lost to Louisville, and then they went back to crushing bad teams. So the losses to Georgia and Louisville, I don't think are as bad as the Alabama losses and the Ole Miss losses and the Texas A&M losses. I refuse to rank Boise State, because if the knock on Indiana is going to be the schedule that they have, then that also has to be the knock on Boise State. Like, if Boise State is ranked in front of Indiana tonight, I'm going to be really upset, because first and foremost, Boise State is not one of the 10 best teams in the country. People just like Ashton Jainty, who, I had Zack Gray on at 1140, and he hit the nail on the head. Ashton Jainty's been pretty average as of late. Give Travis Hunter the Heisman. And so I don't know. Like I said, I do not envy the College Football Playoff Committee at all for having to rank all of these teams, because someone's going to be really upset no matter what happens. Something people won't be upset about, though, is Feast Week, and that's what we got going on this week. I'm looking forward to watching Indiana. How do they perform? And I believe they're in the Battle for Atlantis. I know they're playing in the Bahamas. They're playing Louisville, I think, on Wednesday. So that's at noon. Definitely going to be watching that. And, how do they perform against good teams? Because, sure, they played South Carolina. They're okay, I guess. I wanted to play Gonzaga. I want to see how they stack up. I also want to know, how do they rebound? It's been their biggest issue. Okay, giving up 17 offensive rebounds. They've given up 17 offensive rebounds a couple times in different games this year to teams that aren't very good. And so I want to see how they do that. I'm fully trained in on the Maui Invitational. Who's going to get the Maui bump? If you don't know what the Maui bump is, I'm telling you, whoever wins the Maui Invitational every year, just launches up the rankings. I mean, just a massive leap. So, going to be, tuned into that. Great games tonight. Houston plays Alabama. That's number 6 and number 9 going at it. They play tonight at 8:00. Then Kansas and Duke play tonight at 9:00. That's number 12 and number 1. Obviously, Cooper Flagg, that dude's awesome. If you haven't watched him, stay up tonight and watch this kid play basketball. He is incredible. No other way for it. Other games happening throughout the week. Texas A&M is going to play Creighton. Those are two teams ranked in the 20s. Those games should be interesting. A&M was ranked really high, if I remember correctly, to start the year, and then they lost, and then they plummeted. So still a good team. Creighton, they're always good. They always shoot it. They always play well. And then, of course, Alabama plays Rutgers. Rutgers, super talented, the number 2 and 3 players, or the number 2 and 3 ranked freshmen in the country play for them. Ace Bailey's kind of the main attraction there. They're playing Alabama. That game's tomorrow night as well. Can't wait to watch that one. And then Arkansas and Illinois play on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. So that's going to do it here for the Real Jonathan Smith Show from 10 to noon. I guess the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 1, filling in for him. A nice 3 hours, a fast 3 hours. Love doing the show. Love talking to you and everything else that's going on. Have a great Thanksgiving. Spend time with your family. Do all that good stuff. I hope you have a nice, blessed Thanksgiving. Watch a lot of football. Watch a lot of college basketball. Eat a whole bunch of food, and then go to the gym next week to work it all off. That's my advice, and that is what I myself will be doing. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday from 10 to noon, and Dan Dockich will be back on Monday from noon to 3. Make sure you download that Indy Sports Ticket app so you can listen to us. Make sure you head over to YouTube, subscribe to Indy Sports Ticket, and enjoy everything that we have going on over there. Thank you again for listening. I'm very thankful for all the listeners here at Indy Sports Ticket, and hopefully you guys can or will continue listening as we get into further into the sports season. So once again, happy Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you on Monday.